Are we all here? Well, close enough. Welcome. Sorry, I was getting my new setup here with a camera. So I believe we're here. We'll come to order. Anne, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. All right. If you would please announce your name when I announce your jurisdiction. County of San Mateo. County of San Mateo.
Carolyn Blady for Carol Groom.
Thank you. Town of Atherton.
Rick DeGolia.
City of Belmont.
Julia Mates.
City of Brisbane.
Pauline Mackin.
City of Burlingame.
Donna Colson.
Sorry, Town of Colma.
Raquel Gonzalez.
Okay, City of Daly City.
Rod Megwal.
City of East Palo Alto.
Carlos Romero, present.
City of Foster City. Foster City. City of Half Moon Bay.
Harvey Rohrback.
Town of Hillsborough.
Larry May.
City of Los Banos.
Tom Faria.
City of Menlo Park.
Betsy Nash.
City of Millbrae.
Ann Schneider.
City of Pacifica.
Tiger Jazz Big Stick.
Town of Portola Valley.
Jeff Alfs.
City of Redwood City.
Giselle Hale.
City of San Bruno.
Marty Medina.
City of San Carlos.
Laura Palmer Lohan.
Glad to be here.
I heard Laura Palmer Lohan and who else?
Oh, John Dugan.
Thank you. City of San Mateo.
Rick Bonilla.
City of South San Francisco.
James Coleman.
Town of Woodside. Woodside. Director Emeritus.
Pradeep Gupta.
And Director Emeritus.
John Keeter. And Big Pine, I'm joining.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. We do have a quorum, and we do have some new members and alternates that would need to be sworn in.
And
Yes.
this is Andy Stern. Sam Hindi also from Foster City wanted to let you know that he's here.
Do you have plans for it, or don't throw it away?
There's two of them here.
Give me a quick one.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Sam.
Anne, can you let me know which of the folks are present for swearing in?
Okay. It sounds like we've got James Coleman, John Dugan. Tiger had already been sworn in.
Right.
Raquel, it sounds like you may have just been reappointed to the board.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I forget if I go by Ray or Raquel.
Okay. I don't have a swearing in document for you, Raquel, but Jennifer can walk you through it and I can send you one. Are there any other new members who have not been sworn in yet who are online tonight? Michael Smith? No. Okay, then it sounds like we've got John and James who would need to be sworn in.
Okay. In the interest of time, John and James, I think we're going to do both of you at the same time. Do you have the script in front of you, just so you can have it as a reference? I will be giving you short bits of it to repeat.
Yes, I sure do.
And Raquel, just in case, I know you had been on the board before, but since you've been reappointed, if you want to go through this as well.
Sure, that's fine.
All right. You can repeat after me. I, and your name.
I, John Dugan.
James Coleman.
Raquel Gonzalez.
do solemnly swear that I will support
Do solemnly swear that I will
Swear that I will support
and defend the Constitution of the United States
and defend
defend
the
the
Constitution of the United
of
States
the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of
of
California
California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all
Against all
enemies,
enemies,
foreign and domestic.
foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
That I will
That I
bear
will
true
bear
faith and
true
allegiance
faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
to the Constitution of the United
Constitution
States
of the United
and the
States
Constitution
and
of the State of
Constitution
California.
State of California.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I will take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I will well and faithfully discharge
That I will
That I will
and
well
faithfully
and
discharge
faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon
the
which
duties that I'm about to enter.
And that's it. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you. Okay, and welcome. Okay, we will then turn to our first item, which is public comment. If anyone wishes to address the board on an item not on tonight's agenda, you may do so now. Please, if you want to speak, please use the raise hands feature in Ring Central.
Jeff, I just wanted to point out that we do have 3 public comments that were
Yes.
included in the agenda packet.
Yes, my question is, for council, do I need to read them into the record, or can I simply acknowledge them and point to them in the packet?
What are the length? Is it possible to read the comments without taking up a ton of time? If not, we can succinctly summarize them.
I could try to succinctly summarize them.
Okay, and for purposes of the record, those comments are posted with the agenda packet online for
Yes.
review.
Okay, so yes, there are 3 items under public comment. Again, I will summarize them because there's some that are longer. The first one is from Tim Strinden, asking that we asking for email addresses to be shared on the PCE website so that members of the public could contact us directly. I believe we talked about this a bit today, and I believe we will make sure, since we all have a public-facing email address on our council websites, I believe we will try to make those addresses available through PCE so that someone could, if they need to, reach us directly through the PCE website as opposed to having to find all the addresses on individuals' council websites. So I believe we will address that one. The next one is from Jim Evangelist. Basically he was supporting our decision to reject the nuclear credits from PG&E. He cited the Daily Journal article from December 7th, and basically he said, I believe the board made the right decision in rejecting an offer from PG&E to accept the nuclear credits. And then he suggested the board to encourage its members to use their influence to incorporate the 100% renewable energy option offered by the organization, all new development. And again, that is on the website and part of the agenda packet. The third comment comes from Bruce Carney. And he is requesting support from board members for a bill. He has been working with Josh Becker's office to suggest a bill. The proposed legislation would allow for jurisdictions to charge different UUT rates for natural gas versus electricity. And so he's suggesting this is a bill idea. He's already raised it with Senator Becker's office and is just asking for board members to, if they're interested, to weigh in with the senator's office. The full letter is in the packet. Feel free to take a look. Sorry, and I see that Bruce actually has his hand up. Bruce, why don't you go ahead and comment on this?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment. It is on the same topic you just raised. To make it easy for those who are supporting the bill idea, I've emailed all of the directors today with a link to a Google Doc where if you find this to be a good idea, you can put your name and your title there as supporters. Director Nash has been first past the post. She's already endorsed, and I hope many of the rest of you will choose to do that as well. Also about 6 or 7 elected officials from Santa Clara County have already signed on. Really, the background here is that the tax rates on fossil fuels and on electricity really don't have a coherent underlying thought that matches the need to decarbonize. So for example, if you buy gasoline, your effective tax rate is about 27%. If you buy a canister of propane, it's about 9%. If you buy natural gas in San Mateo County, it ranges from 0% to about 6.5%. Various cities have tax rates between 3.5% and 6.5% in San Mateo County. In other cities in the state, it ranges as high as 11%. So, certainly I think that cities should have the flexibility to have a higher tax rate on natural gas than on electricity, but PG&E's billing system doesn't allow that to happen. And they want to get paid in order to make the software modifications that would allow it to happen. And I think that that's a good use of ratepayer money. And so the proposal suggests that PG&E should make the software changes, rate base the modest amount of money it costs, and then by the time we get to the March 2022 primary, cities will be able to put taxes on the ballot that tax gas but not electricity. So I hope you'll all sign on. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And yeah, I've been meaning to look at that, and I'm very interested in this as well. So I do encourage everyone to take a look at the proposal, and if you're interested, get in touch with Bruce. Thank you. Okay. If there are no other hands up from the public, that concludes our public comment. That moves us on to the chair report. Anne, did you get my slide for the chair report?
Yes, but I do think we need to do consent first.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. We do. I will next up take an action to set the agenda and approve consent agenda items.
I make a motion to approve consent agenda.
A second.
Okay, moved by Rick Bonilla, seconded by Laura Palmer Lohan. Any discussion? Then Anne, roll call vote, please.
Okay, if you would please announce your name when I announce your jurisdiction, or actually not your name, announce your approval or disapproval of the motion when I announce your jurisdiction. County of San Mateo.
Yes.
County of San Mateo.
Yes.
Town of Atherton. City of Belmont.
Yes.
City of Brisbane.
Yes.
City of Burlingame. Burlingame. Okay. Town of Colma.
Yes.
City of Daly City.
Yes.
City of East Palo Alto.
Yes.
City of Foster City. Foster City. City of Half Moon Bay.
Yes.
Town of Hillsborough.
Yes.
City of Los Banos.
Yes.
City of Menlo Park.
Yes.
City of Millbrae.
Question. The City of Millbrae has a comment on consent item number 10. Can I make the comment following the vote?
Sure.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. City of Pacifica.
Yes.
Town of Portola Valley.
Yes.
City of Redwood City.
Yes.
City of San Bruno,
Yes.
City of San Carlos,
Yes.
City of San Mateo,
Yes.
City of South San Francisco, South San Francisco, Town of
Yes.
Woodside. Oh, sorry, I
Yes.
think, there we got it. Okay. And Town of Woodside. Okay, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
And
And
I got Donna Colson said yes, and she's having trouble with her mic.
Okay, thank you very much.
thanks, Andy. Okay, Ann Schneider, you wanted to make a comment. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 10 was also came before us a year ago. I was the one no vote. The city of Millbrae, like maybe possibly many cities, are in the middle of a hiring freeze and minding our budget. So we're a little concerned. And I apologize to staff. I ran out of time to find out if we actually, or if this business is actually a WBE or a WBE, which at least would make it more palatable. And if in the future, as we have our own local hiring preferences, and right now we're working on trying to hire minority and women-owned businesses, if we can see that happen the next time around.
Okay, noted. Thank you, Ann. Yes.
Thank you.
Good point. Okay. Okay, then that brings us to the chair report. So I have one item I wanted to bring up, and can you go to my slide? In my zeal to repopulate the executive committee in December, I overlooked our policy 16, which actually lays out procedures for both how we fill executive committee slots and how we nominate a board chair and vice chair. And because I have now served my 3 years as the limits and am limited by policy 16, we will actually need to replace me this in March. So this slide just lays out the process that we need to go through. Oh, sorry, Jennifer, go ahead.
Yes, we did have another member who has not been sworn in, who needs to be sworn in, just join us. So I apologize for the interruption, but I can just quickly do that so that we have all our ducks in a row.
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe that's Mr. Smith. Is that Mike Smith? Are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I'm not familiar with the Ring Central platform. I had to download it, so apologies about.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Do you have the script in front of you for the swearing in, or do you just want to repeat after me?
Sure, I'll just repeat after you.
Okay. I, Michael Smith,
I, Michael Smith,
do solemnly swear that I will
do solemnly swear that I will
support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I will take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
That's it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome, Michael. Okay. All right, where were we? Okay. Yes, as per policy 16, tonight, okay, in December, we, Dave Pine, Rick Bonilla, and Larry May agreed to be the nominating committee for the executive committee. I'm hoping and assuming that they will be okay with remaining as our nominating committee, but they will be the nominating committee for a new chair and vice chair. And there's been a sort of assumption that the vice chair would sort of assume the chair position when the chair steps down. My vice chair, Rick DeGolia, has said that he's willing to take on the chair position if you all see fit. Others, if anyone else is interested, though, you are welcome to forward your names to the nominating committee for consideration. So what will happen is that tonight we will just reaffirm our nominating committee of Dave, Rick, and Larry. If anyone else wants to join that nominating committee, they're welcome to do so. And between now and our next meeting, you are also welcome to give your names to the committee, Dave, Rick, or Larry, to be considered for the chair or vice chair positions. Next month, the committee will come back and they will nominate a chair and vice chair for the board to approve. And then that new chair and vice chair will nominate the executive committee members. So we currently have 7 members, assuming that all want to continue. And then if whoever's interested can give their name. So we have a couple of names, but we can just confirm those. In March, then the chair and vice chair will nominate the full executive committee, the returning members and new members, and the board will approve those in March. So we are not taking any action tonight other than to just confirm that Dave, Rick, and Larry are our nominating committee, to just ask if anyone else wants to join that nominating committee, and to let you know that if you're interested in either the chair, vice chair, or a spot on the executive committee, you may forward you may tell the nominating committee or me that you're interested. Any questions?
Rick, it's Dave. If I could just add, if you would like to be considered for chair, vice chair, or executive committee, if you could just send a note with you putting forth your background and reasons for wanting to serve in those positions, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Dave. And Giselle, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, being new to this process, just curious to know, will the rest of the board get the full list or see the full list? And then also, will the committee share what their decision criteria were for making their recommendations? How much information and transparency is in the process?
I think what's happened in the past is the nominating committee has basically had just a short report in the packet, sort of explaining who was interested and that their choice. Dave, do you have anything to add to that? I hadn't thought much about that, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the past, the nominating committee has informed the board of all interested candidates, and then made its recommendation and given its thinking behind that.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep. Okay. Okay. If anyone does want to join the nominating committee, this would be the time to do that. If you do want to put your name in for consideration, you can do that anytime. Again, as Dave said, an email with just maybe a brief statement of qualifications would be very helpful. Thank you. Okay. Seeing no hands raised, that is all I have for my report tonight. We'll move on to Jan's CEO report. Go ahead, Jan.
Thank you, Jeff. Nice to see everyone here tonight. We have a big crowd. So good thing we're virtual. I don't think we could fit all these people in the office. We can go to the next slide, please. I have a short report, some staffing changes, welcomes to our new board members and alternates. Quick review of our COVID-19 load impact analysis, speech codes update, and upcoming meetings. So next, please. So I am sorry to report that Joe Weedman has decided to leave PCE to return to running his own op practice, and Joe's last day is going to be tomorrow. And I wanted to thank Joe for the great work he's done building our stellar Ledge-Reg team and the great work that he personally has done during the last 4 years. So I'm sure we'll see Joe. We're not going to say goodbye completely because I'm sure we're going to see him in lots of different dockets and different locations, but we're sorry to see you go, Joe. And thank you so much for everything you've done for us. Virtual clapping.
Well, thank you.
Joe, I don't know if you want to just take 1 minute to say your goodbye.
Certainly. I mean, PCE has been an enormous professional opportunity, and it has really been personally gratifying to work with all of you. It is such an awesome group of people, and the growth in PCE over the last 4 years is really starting to bear fruit. So I'm super excited for the organization, and I hope we do get to see each other in the future. We'll see. But thank you everybody for the opportunity.
I just want to take a minute to thank Joe for everything. I mean, for starters, just educating me as much as you have over the past 4 years. It's been. I joke that my job as a council member is to drink from the fire hose, and you've been one of the fire hoses that have been very, very helpful for me in understanding how this whole business works. So we will miss you. I wish you all the best going forward, and as Jan said, I'm sure we will be hearing more from you. So thank you and take care.
I'd like to comment also. Joe, I want to say that the time I spent working with you on different things, especially lobbying in Sacramento, and being able to speak with you about lots of questions that I've had has been really instrumental. And I believe you have really helped PCE get to where it is over the last handful of years since we've been here. So can't thank you enough. Really appreciate it.
And this is Pradeep, and I'd like to say thank you, Joe. It's been great working with you, going through all the rigmaroles of all the hearings and all the PUC new ideas and maneuvering around. Thank you very much, Joe, and wish you the best in your next endeavor.
Thank you. Those car rides up to Sacramento, I still chuckle about some of them.
Joe, Dave Pine, I too wanted to thank you for being such a thought leader in our industry, and also thank you for building a great team that can carry on your work as you go forward into back to your law practice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Irreplaceable, Joe. Irreplaceable.
There's only one me. But thank you,
Joe,
everybody.
this is Carlos. Sorry, say it ain't so, Joe. You have always been really kind in getting me all the information I ever requested and in calling me up proactively when I had questions. And I can't tell you how much you've been a resource to me. So wish you the best in your next endeavor, but we will miss you. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, I will definitely miss all of you. It's been a lot of fun.
You've been a key part of it, Joe.
Yep.
Yes.
And carry on.
Okay. Yeah, and unfortunately, we can't have a goodbye party for Joe. So I don't know, 9 months from now, a year from now, we'll all get together and have our goodbye party for Joe.
Sure.
Then you'll be back. Who knows?
Hopefully.
Next slide, please. So I just wanted to welcome the new board members. I think 2 of you are here tonight, Colleen and Tom, and Tom, we saw you last month, and Colleen, welcome. I'm not sure that Jennifer is here tonight. Is she? From Woodside. And then the next slide is a whole bunch of new alternate board members that are joining us. So we will be in touch with all of you for training. So I think a few of you are here tonight. Igor and Michael, we just met you, and John and James and Jen, I think you might be here. So welcome to all of you. I look forward to getting to know you. And it's always fun when we have changes in the board, and excited to bring your energy to what we're doing here. Next slide. So one of the things that I do is to try to meet with every board member, alternate, and the city manager at least once a year. This year, we're not going to be able to do that in person yet. So Anne will be contacting you to set up video meetings, and we're going to prioritize the new board members first, just so we can get to know each other and make sure you know how you can get very engaged with PCE. And then we will be setting up a training session for new board members and alternates. And of course, existing board members and alternates are always welcome to attend the training if you want to have a refresh. So Anne will be in touch with all of you. The next slide. So each month we've been doing a COVID-19 load impact analysis. I'll go through this tonight. In the future, I will reduce this to just one slide and have most of this in the written CEO report that you receive. So next slide. So we're comparing this year, 2020, or actually last year, to the previous year of 2019. And between April and December, our load decreased 4%. Much of this was in the commercial and industrial, 13% decrease in commercial industrial and a 10% increase in residential, because we're all hanging out at home right now. Next slide, please. And the monthly load, there was a 7% decrease in our monthly load in the first few months, March through July of 2020 compared to 2019. But since August, it's only been about 2% less than last year. So things are returning back to normal, or people are using more power. Next slide, please. And then if we look by customer class, so the first line there is small commercial, and the months are at the bottom, and this compares the change in load each month compared to the same month in 2019. So we can see, for example, for small commercial, back in April when the shelter in place first started, the small commercial load was down 22% compared to last year. Now it's down 10% compared to equivalent month last year. Another area where there's, I mean, in all of these areas where there was huge drops, we're seeing that the load is coming back on medium commercial, large commercial, and then industrial, it was down 22% in April, and now it's higher by 13% compared to last year. For residential, it was up 14% in April, and now in December, we're about 8% higher than we were in the previous year. So things are starting to level out. And if we go to the next slide, we're just looking at the load shapes. So this is for commercial industrial. The blue line is 2019, the orange line is 2020, and you can see that the delta between the years is starting to decrease as we look from September. October, there wasn't much difference. December, there wasn't as much difference as September. If we go to the next slide, which shows residential, in September, there was quite a lot more load in 2020 compared to 2019. In December, we're still trending above 2019, but not as much as we were before. And then the last slide here shows for PCE overall, we can see the lines kind of converging. So we see that 2020 is starting to catch up to 2019 as we look at December, and the load shape is returning overall. There's not as much difference in the peak times. Next slide, please, is just a look at our status for REACH code. So congratulations to San Carlos, who passed their REACH code in their first reading, and I'm sure you have a second reading coming up, but glad to see you moving forward. And South San Francisco had a study session yesterday, and so we're happy to see the progress that you're starting to make there. So we've got, I don't know how many, we're continuing to work on this, and our goal is hopefully to have all of our jurisdictions passing some form of REACH code. And the next slide is just the list of our meetings. Our next executive committee will be on February 8th at 8 a.m., followed by the Audit and Finance Committee that morning. We'll have the Citizens Advisory Committee on the 11th, and then the next board meeting will be on the 25th. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Anyone has questions? Raise your hands.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, could we please let the new members and the alternates know where they can find the slides? I don't think they know that right now.
Okay. I think they're on the, well, let's have Anne tell them because she posted them. They're on our website, but go ahead, Anne.
Yes, they are on the Board of Directors page, which is, there's a menu across the top of, a banner menu across the top of the website. And if you go to About, a drop-down menu will take you to the Board of Directors page. If you click there, then down below the meeting schedule, you will see key documents, and listed under the meeting for tonight, you will find the agenda packet, and the presentations posted.
Thank you, Anne. And thanks, Rick, for being helpful to our new members.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions on Jan's report? If not,
Jan,
yeah,
I have a, Jan, this is Rick. I have a comment. You know, one of the really great things that all of us that have been on the board for quite some time was able to benefit from was when Professor Gupta did his 2 sessions for us that really brought us up to speed on this power industry and some of the nuances. And I'm impressed by the large number of new alternates that we have. That might be something to consider doing at some point over this year so that those folks can get up to speed on, we all know this is a very technical business.
Okay, that's a great idea, and we'll be in touch with Professor Gupta to see if he's available.
okay, if there are no more questions, we'll move on to item 3, which is the CAC committee report. CAC report. Desiree.
Hi, this is Ray Larios.
Oh, hey, Ray. Sorry.
Hi. Yes, Desiree couldn't be with us today. She had a personal matter to attend to. So I am the vice chair. For those who don't know me, I'm the vice chair of the CAC, and I'm here to just provide the report on Desiree's behalf and on behalf of the CAC. Congratulations to the new members and to the new alternates. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. And we met last week, no, not last week, we met on the 14th. And just to provide a brief summary of what happened during that meeting, we approved the recommendation that we will be discussing later tonight. I will also speak to this later. And we also heard from our very own Joel Fullerton. He presented on addressing climate action, resiliency, and education at the community college. And so he gave us a wonderful presentation of all the work that he's done at the community colleges, and it was great. There was salsa references and whatnot. So I highly advise to check that out if you have the opportunity. For the new members, just kind of echoing the last comment, you can always find all of our agendas and minutes on the PCE website under the CAC. And yeah, we're just happy to meet as always and be as productive as we can. I have nothing else to share with you folks today.
Thanks, Ray. And we will be hearing a little more from the the group, because they've authored a statement of an equity statement that we'll be pondering later. So thank you, Ray, for everything you're doing on that committee right now, and the whole group's doing some great work. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Are there any questions for Ray right now? Okay, don't see any. We'll move on to item 4, which is our draft memo, our rate change. Leslie, do you want to take this one?
Yes, thank you. I can
Go to the next slide, please. So this is, we're discussing, as we all know, PG&E recently had a rate change on January 1st of this year. While we all were expecting this rate change to take place, we did not have the information about the details and how the all of the individual components of the different rates were going to be impacted until those detailed tariff sheets were published by PG&E, which did not happen until December 30th, which is why we're coming to you now with the request for a rate change to be implemented after PG&E's rates have already been adjusted. So once we did the analysis on those changes that PG&E implemented January 1, it became, it was obvious that our rates are actually higher right now. So our customers, when they're taking impacts of the higher PCIA charges and the lower PG&E generation rates, the net cost to Peninsula Clean Energy customers right now is actually higher than what they would be paying as a PG&E bundled customer. We knew that there were going to be increases in PCIA as part of the settlement that was coming for the under collection that took place in 2020. But it was quite a large increase that we're experiencing right now. And in addition, there was a decrease in the generation rate. So we can go to the next slide. If you, for those of you who may not know, who might be new to the board, we calculate our current methodology for doing our rate calculation for Peninsula Clean Energy. As we start with the PG&E generation rate. We take 95% of that, so our customers are realizing a net 5% discount currently, and then we subtract out the PCIA and the franchise fee surcharge, which are line items that are imposed on PG&E side of the bill, and whatever's left over after that for each individual tariff becomes the Peninsula Clean Energy Eco Plus rate. You can go to the next slide. So this is just a summary of the PG&E system average generation rates that took place where we were at before with the May 1st, which was the last major rate change that PG&E had May 1st of last year, and then what took place in January 1st of this year. And you can see sort of across the board, the generation rates, pretty much dropped for every rate schedule, except for the E19 transmission rate, but that's a sort of a specialized rate schedule. But for all of the general rate cases, the generation rate came down. You can go to the next slide. And the PCIA charge increased across the board. And right now we use a 2016 vintage as our PCIA vintage for San Mateo County, because that is the vintage that's assigned by default to our service territory when we started service. So with a really high increase in the PCIA and a decrease in the generation rate, that puts a double squeeze on our end rate that we need to implement in order to maintain that discount for customers. Go to the next slide. And if you take a look for PG&E, this is taking a look at PG&E's system average bundled rates. So there were increases, while there were decreases in the gen rate, there were increases in the T&D rates. And so on average for a bundled customer, their rates are, for a residential customer, it's actually going up a little bit. On the other customer classes, it's going down a little bit. So this is the overall sort of experience on someone's bill that's happening when you factor in both changes in generation and transmission and distribution. You can go to the next slide. There are going to be some more changes coming in March as part of the settlement and other decisions that were happening very late in December. Not all of the changes were reflected in that January 1 rate change, and we do know that there's going to be some changes in March. We do not have the details for those yet, but we are expecting to get those in February, probably, the second half of February is when we'll see the details of them. Pretty much everyone agrees that we're expecting to see increase in PG&E generation rates from the experts, from the consultants that we're using. That's what they're forecasting, but the level of increase in the generation rate is really in question. There's a lot of sort of debate about what that's going to be, so we won't actually know until we get the tariff sheets, is sort of the safe answer there. And there's going to be some further adjustments in the PCIA as well, but not nearly at the same level that we just saw happening in January. So our plan, you can go to the next slide, is right now we're recommending that the board authorize us to make adjustments to the Peninsula Clean Energy Eco Plus rates to reinstate that net 5% discount to all customers. We've already been working with our billing agent Calpine to test and program those rates. So they're ready to go to get those implemented February 1 if we get approval tonight. And when the details are available for the March rate adjustments, we will be doing some analysis on those, and we'll obviously come back to the board with some additional recommendations on what we think we should do, you know, going forward when we understand what those March changes are going to look like. Is there any questions?
Any
Yeah.
questions? Guys, okay. Try to raise your hands on the software if you can.
Oh, you want to do that?
I can't see everyone. I just can't see everyone.
Okay, all right, no problem. Here.
Is that Harvey? Go ahead, Harvey. I
That's
see
Harvey,
you on the
yeah.
screen, but okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Has the fact that right now PG&E customers are paying less than PCE, has that fact gotten out to anybody? It could really be very damaging, even for a brief period.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a fair question, and right now is a little bit of a challenging time because winter months are when people tend to look at their bills regardless, because they usually get a little bit higher in the winter months, usually actually triggered by gas usage and the higher gas prices in the winter months. So when customers have been calling in, I've been keeping in good contact with our call center. The calls coming in for high bill complaints have been pretty nominal, but the CSRs right now are using as a talking, looking at talking points of, that we are, going to the board to, propose a readjustment of the rate. We don't expect our rates to be, higher for an extended period of time. This is sort of a short fluctuation that happens with, PG&E's, rate changes, coming without us having a proper, notice in terms of being able to make adjustments, alongside them. But it actually has not been an issue. We're towards the end of the month, and our opt-outs for this time of the year are normal for what they would normally see in any other time of the year. So it has not been a significant sort of impact in customer behavior we haven't gotten a lot of questions about it.
Hey, Jeff.
Good to
Jeff,
hear.
Jeff, this is Andy. Harvey, just for context, we don't really have a lot of alternative when we're tied to PG&E's rates. We didn't know what the rates were going to be until they got announced, and they got announced and published right 2 days before the end of the year, 2 days before they became effective on January 1. And we can't really change our rates without board approval. And this is the first board meeting we're having, so we're our hands are tied. The alternative happens when PG&E changes their rates and they go the other way, where people then get a bigger discount than 5%. And that's happened as well until we have a chance to meet with the board and change rates. So we're sensitive to your question, but we can't really do anything about it when we're tied to PG&E's rates.
I hear you. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Harvey. Okay, I see John's hand up, then Pradeep, Carlos, and Sam. John, go ahead.
Yeah. So about the PCIA, my understanding is that our only obligation on that is to pay 5% of that to remain 5% below PG&E, that we aren't paying the whole thing.
Well,
Is it
we don't actually pay any PCIA.
That's right.
The PG&E
Yeah.
charges that to customers. Yeah.
Right.
But
But we do give our customers the 5% discount.
no, we discount the bill by 100% of the PCIA.
What's that?
We discount the bill by 100% of the PCIA.
Well, when we look at our rate, maybe you want to go back up to that slide. Yeah. So when we're taking a look at, when we're talking about our discount being a net 5% discount, we're looking at what the customer would otherwise pay with PG&E as their generation provider. And so we factor in, the PG&E, the bundled PG&E generation rate, and take a 95% of that, so that there's a 5% discount from what they would otherwise pay as a PG&E generation customer. And then we back out what are the surcharges that a customer is going to have to pay by taking PCE as their service provider. They're going to have to pay the PCIA, and they're going to have to pay the franchise fee. And so that's how we get to the Eco Plus rate. So, we could say PG&E generation rate. We could change how we calculate it, like you're suggesting. I think saying PG&E generation rate minus PCIA, then take 95%. That's not really a 5% discount. That would really be more like a 1.5% discount. That is a different way we could do it. But if you're talking about an apples to apples comparison with the PG&E generation rate, what the customer would otherwise pay when they're a PG&E generation customer, if we want to, state a specific discount from that rate, then this is the math equation that I think we need to stick to.
But I would point out that the PG&E generation rate includes the PCIA and franchise fees. Isn't that right?
It does, but not as line items right now on the customer bill. So it's
Right.
bundled and hidden. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's a whole different topic. Yeah.
So we are not, we don't pay the entire PCIA for the customers.
No, we are.
We don't pay any. That's not, it's not true.
we
Leslie,
don't pay
Leslie,
any.
one second. Leslie, we don't
Yeah.
pay the PCIA for the customers. What we do is we
Right.
assume that a customer, we know that a customer is charged $1. Let's say the customer is charged $10 in PCIA fees. We deduct out of there, we calculate the 95%, and then we give them credit for that $10 in PCIA fees. So effectively, the customer ends up not paying a PCIA fee because we credit them back for it.
Right. So just to Andy clarify, the important thing I think from what John's saying is that we're setting our generation rate at 95% of PG&E, but then we're backing out 100% of the PCIA rate.
That's correct.
Yeah.
We're making our customers
at
whole
the-
for the PCIA. Yes.
Right.
So in fact, if at the end of the billing, you were to look at just what we were collecting versus PG&E's generation rate, it's, what is it, Leslie? It's like 65% or
It's
60%.
like, it's significantly less. At this point, it's probably like maybe 30 or 40% of what PG&E's generate is. Yeah, it's, with the new PCIA, it's going to be quite a bit less. So it's our generation charge by itself is significantly less than 95% of PG&E's generation charge, but because we're factoring in the other costs the customer is going to have to be assessed or responsible for by taking our service as a generation provider, that's how we get to this sort of configuration or math to get what our rate is.
Yeah, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that every other CCA, while they don't have 95% of the generation rate, some of them have a 0 there or maybe 99%. I think that every CCA covers the PCIA cost.
I mean, it's not necessarily. I mean, everyone's actually doing it quite differently now. But you know, for CCAs that are you know, talking about having parity or having any sort of discount, you know, for their customer, they do have to factor something in regards to the PCIA into their rate making calculations. And for a couple of the CCAs that are not less than PG&E, like they very well stated, you know, that their costs are higher if you have them as your service provider. They're still factoring in the PCIA portion that the customers are paying, but they're not creating, you know, they're not making their rate so that it's a discount, but they're using it to bracket, I guess, what their total overall costs are going to be, and looking at saying, well, we're okay being 5% over, you know, our customers in total paying 5% more by having us as their service provider, and in which case they are factoring in what is the customer paying in a PCIA charge to get to that bundled, you know, that total cost that puts them 5% over what they would otherwise pay if they were just a PG&E customer.
Okay,
we might have to wrap this up
Everyone
offline.
a little bit
Sorry.
differently.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying.
Sorry.
Okay, Pradeep. It's okay. Pradeep Scott is up next.
Jeff, I just have two comments. One is just to echo what Harvey was talking about. It was basically the customer trust. We proclaimed that we will be 5% lower than PG&E, and at least for the month of January, that won't be true. And I understand there's difficulties involved, and I don't know what the solution is. Number two, it seems like many of these rate increases will be happening in the future pretty rapidly without giving too much advance warning for us to adjust our rates. Can we initiate some kind of request to get early warning for our rate setting purposes from either PUC or PG&E? Thank you.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Yeah, we've had a lot of these conversations with PG&E staff in other lots of ways. You know, I'll be honest and say that the rates team at PG&E and the interactions that I've had, they would like to get us the numbers, you know, faster if they could. But in many cases, they're literally working on them, you know, until a couple of hours before they're being published online. It really comes down to the wire in some of these cases. But, you know, we did, you know, for our internal purposes, we did come to the board a while ago and ask for some authorization to make, you know, moves that were small, you know, pre-authorization to make sort of small adjustments in rates if needed to accommodate PG&E moves that were small and not have to come for, you know, to the board. But a rate change like this is large enough that we really needed to understand what the numbers were going to be first and come to the board and get approval before we could have made a change to align directly with PG&E. It was a big enough change. It fell out sort of outside of the scope of what we had sort of come to the board to ahead of time for, to ask for a little pre-authorization for, to make changes without coming to the board for authorization.
Thank you. I understand the reason.
Yeah, we've put some effort into streamlining this to get the respond as quickly as possible. So it's a good point, but I think staff's worked very hard to try to keep us as close to current as we can as possible. Carlos is up next. Go ahead, Carlos.
Yes, my question is probably more directed at Andy and Jan, but Leslie, you want to chime in. So I understand that the 5% discount is a policy of PCE, granted. I also understand that this rate increase will burn off in 3 years because it's amortized. This increase is amortizing kind of this previous 2020 and prior increase that was not applied. So correct, it's amortized over 3 years. So we're going to burn this off in 3 years. Is that correct?
The PCIA adder, yes.
Yeah, okay. However, in your report, you specifically say that this leads to, and let me call it up on my other computer here. It says a cumulative effect of these combined actions is that PCE will need to significantly lower its generation rates to maintain the net 5% discount on its Eco Plus rate, resulting in less revenue to PCE. And so what I'm having problems with is, you know, how much less revenue? Should we be reconsidering this 5% discount? You know, I understand that we had talked about PCIA problems through 2024. So I think this is a bigger question that goes beyond just the simple issue of, you know, lowering our cost to meet the 5%. And so Andy and Jan, when do we have that critical discussion?
Carlos, thank you for asking that question, and that is a critical discussion, and we've started having that. We have a board, well, actually, as a result of the last executive committee, we formed a small subcommittee to be able to discuss with a non-quorum of the executive committee the impact of the changes. I think there's some background noise from someone here.
Folks, can you mute yourselves if you're not talking? Thanks.
So we are in the midst of doing that, and Andy and his team, Andy and Haley, have been running a gazillion runs of our financial model to look at what the impact is going to be. And the forecasts are continually changing. They change like every hour of what's going to happen in the future. So we are in the midst of doing that, and we will be coming to the executive committee and the audit and finance committee in February to get into that in more detail with you. But there are some tough decisions that the board is going to have to make, and we're looking at all of the different ways we can reduce costs, possibly increase revenues to meet our objectives.
So Jeff, just one quick follow-up, if you'll allow.
Sure. Go ahead.
So if we approve this 5% today, which again, it is a policy of PCE's, we can't unwind from it until next year around this time. Is that correct?
No, that's not the case.
No.
We're suggesting that we go ahead and make this change now because this is what we have typically done. But we want to have further discussions with the board, and they're complicated, complex discussions, and get into that next month so that you all can decide what we should do and likely change rates mid-year. So it deserves a much more detailed discussion than what we can do right now.
Yeah, and Carlos, I'll just add on to one more piece there. PG&E has already announced some changes in both PCIA and gen rates effective March 1. They haven't announced what they'll be, but we have some indication of what we believe they'll be. So we expect, even without all the discussions Jan's mentioning that we've been working on and that we will bring to those committees in a week and a half, we expect to have a rate change. And we've done rate changes multiple times a year before. So if we have to, if PG&E changes, we'll change with them even by following the current policy.
Great, thanks, Andy. I look forward to a capacious discussion at the Finance Committee. Thanks.
You will get that. But we wanted to do this now because we don't like that we're higher than PG&E right now. And so that's why we're asking to make this change. And Leslie has worked closely with Calpine so that if you approve this tonight, those new rates can go into effect on Monday.
Okay. Sam Hindi, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My question along the line is Pardeep, having quite enough notice about the rate changes, but I probably need to be educated a little bit. My understanding that the rates has to be approved by the PUC, or that's not the case. And if it is, wouldn't the PUC be required to give advance notice, or just when they come to the ruling?
Yeah,
Leslie,
Sam, I guess I'll chime in.
Andy, okay.
Our rates are not as a CCA. Our rates are not subject to CPUC approval. This board has the approval and the authority to change rates and set its own rates for CCA.
And I understand that, Andy. Thank you. My question was related to PG&E rates when they change. Does the PUC have to approve them or no?
Yes, that's true. The CPUC does approve PG&E's rates.
But still, that doesn't give us clearly doesn't give us enough time.
Yeah. No, yeah, and they do approve, and there's rate cases, and they approve. They essentially, and Jeremy probably is actually better than to answer this if he's on. I'm not sure if he is, but
Leslie, if you'd like, I'm happy.
Joe, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So we receive various notices over the course from February through the rest of the summer in this docket that actively litigates these rates. The problem is that over the course of the docket, the numbers change. And even when you get into updates in November about what they're going to be, between November and December, because active litigation is still ongoing, until the PUC makes a decision, you don't really know. And the numbers can swing quite a bit depending on who wins certain arguments. I mean, we've had years where we found $800 million in errors.
Thank you. Thank you. That helps a lot. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, Donna, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So my question, I have two, would be, Jan, would it be possible, if it's not too onerous for the staff, to get a summary of what the other CCAs are doing in terms of a discount or a premium on the rates? And I know those probably fluctuate, so just the most recent, and how they're handling the PCIA, because I think it would be helpful for us to benchmark off of our collective neighbors, maybe just to understand what others are doing. And then secondly, I really do want to thank, I noticed KJ, and I noticed on the website, the language has kind of softened a little bit, where we're saying, we're providing green energy for less than PG&E. And I think, we should soften that language a little and not necessarily put the explicit 5% in, and possibly give ourselves a little bit of room for whatever we need to do to effectively manage the revenue side of the equation for the organization.
So Donna, we can provide information on what other CCAs are doing. We have the largest discount. We've always had the largest discount. I live in Santa Clara County, and SVCE has just changed their rates, and we are now here in Santa Clara County getting 1% discount compared to PG&E. So a number of the CCAs are like between 0.5% and 1 to 2% discount. There are some that are higher. Sonoma Clean Power is about 5% higher than PG&E. So they've made that decision, and their opt-out rates have increased. So we're all trying to navigate these latest changes, and we'll be getting into a lot more detail on this as we get more information and run through that with the committees.
Thank you.
Tom Faria.
Thank you. I don't know what kind of a bookkeeping error it would be, but when there's a large discrepancy, is it possible to, compensate in the following month's billing for the fact that, that 1 month was over PG&E, and then following month we'll let you know that, we can compensate for that, or even spread it out over a few months. I realize it might be a billing nightmare, but it's just a thought.
It's not something we have done. It's something we could do, but as like Andy mentioned, this fluctuation goes both ways, and it has gone both ways historically. So when there's been changes with PG&E going the other way, where there have been times when we've had a month or so of discounts that were 7, 8, 10% below PG&E. Before we've been able to come to the board and have a vote to have adjustment. So it does go both ways. And I think we've just sort of kind of wrote it going both ways and haven't gone back to do a backwards adjustment for the reasons like you mentioned. It is while it's technically possible, it is kind of a billing nightmare.
Okay, thank you.
And just for perspective, this happens at least once a year, and usually more than once a year that we get a rate shift. And we've just, I mean, we don't typically lose a lot of customers over these sort of short-term fluctuations, and we've just kind of ridden them out, and it's never really had a huge impact on the business. So,
Okay.
And-
If they're not
and-
impacting business, then I guess.
PG&E
Go ahead, Andy.
sometimes PG&E sometimes changes their rates 3 and 4 times a year. We typically follow those changes, even though we can't always do them at the same time. Some CCAs have a policy of only doing it once a year just because of that. And customers are, it is a big task to change rates. And nobody really even notices that the rates changed. We just try to meet our obligation to be 5% as basically as close as we can and as often as we can.
Very good. Thank you very much.
yeah, thank you. Rick DeGolia. Rick?
Yeah, I was muted.
There you go. Okay.
Given that we're going to go into great detail on looking at the rates and in light of these dramatic changes here, we're going to really look at this in detail to figure out how to adjust our cost and revenue side. I think now the request to reinstate the net 5% is the right thing to do. So I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendation.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. Rick Bonilla, you have your hand up. Did you want to make another question or question or comment?
I don't really have a question. I just want to say that I see this as an important practice. We have maintained the 5% discount for Echo Plus since the very beginning. I think it's important during these times to maintain a steady hand on the rudder. The public should be able to have certain expectations, and in a world where lots of other things are changing rapidly, I think that it shows in our very low opt-out rate. Okay, people like the rate. I think that anybody with sensitivity to that is going to see this as a great thing. So those are my comments. Clearly, I support it. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Marty Medina, go ahead.
Yes, I was wondering if we could provide that 1 month of a rebate of whatever difference that was. I feel that, I mean, I've always told people it's 5%, it's cleaner energy and it's 5% cheaper, and it wasn't for this month. And I feel that's something that it kind of hurts the credibility a little bit. And to have to explain it that way, well, it didn't happen for this reason, but I think if it isn't too difficult to go ahead and provide the customers that difference.
I'm just going to say this right now. It's pretty difficult. It is not trivial to do a rebate. And we've talked about this on several times through executive committee about some sort of, not even for this, just for could we give a rebate back to customers? It ends up being a lot of work, and sending out, sort of even bill credits turn out to be really complicated. So I see your point. And I'm kind of weighing in on staff's behalf here. I don't think, I personally, I just don't think it's worth the effort that it would take to fix for one month out of the year. If staff wants to contradict me on that, you're welcome to. But
I will contradict you.
Okay.
I mean, what wouldn't be super difficult would be a fixed amount of credit if you wanted to, if you wanted to say all residents got a $5 credit and all commercial customers got a $20 credit or something like that. I mean, we could do that. It wouldn't be equitable. It wouldn't be representative of what someone's exact differential would be, but that would be the easiest way to institute it. But to be honest, I don't think we should. I wouldn't recommend we do it because I think once we get into the discussion about the other options that we need to evaluate, I think that it might sort of make that conversation a little bit moot.
Hey, Leslie, I'll just add on, and that given that it's been asked a couple of times, we'll take a look at it and see if it can be done easily and reasonably, and if it's worth it, then we'll report back.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Andy. Dave Pine, go ahead.
You know, I'm going to vote in favor of the rate change and keeping the 5% discount for the time being. But, you know, just the board needs to be aware that, you know, our financial situation is going to be drastically changing with the massive BCIA increases. And, you know, our ability to keep a 5% rate is really going to be under pressure. And in my view, not realistic to keep that same discount once these PCIA charges kick in. But, you know, for the time being, I will support this.
Yeah, Dave is right. There's kind of a reckoning coming, I think, throughout CCA. And Donna, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. Yes, I just thought I would put it in perspective. If the average, I believe we learned that the average bill was something around $113 for a residential customer, Leslie, something in there. So if we're off by a 5% discount, so 5% discount, say we're at 4 or, you know, 4.5 or 3, you're really only talking about maybe $1 or $1.50 for, you know, the average customer. So maybe that helps put it into perspective on an aggregate dollar amount, and the amount of work and adjustment to fix that just seems that so long as we don't worry about it on the upside and the downside at the end, it all kind of washes close.
Yeah. Thanks, Donna. Pradeep, go ahead.
Oh, just one comment that are we talking about not only changing Echo Plus, but also Echo 100 rates?
Yeah, well, so Echo 100 is just the Echo Plus rate with 1 penny added within each class. So it's, I mean, it just moves in tandem with the Eco Plus rate.
Thank you.
Sorry if anyone wants to add to that, but that was just thought I'd answer that quickly. Okay, we've got a motion, a second. Is there any public comment on this question of rate change? I'm looking for hands on Ring Central. Okay, seeing none. If there's no other discussion or comments, we could do a roll call vote. I do not see any hands up. So, Anne, go ahead.
Nope, I was just about to do the vote.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right. If you would please announce your approval or disapproval of the motion when I announce your jurisdiction. County of San Mateo.
Yes.
County of San Mateo.
Yes.
Town of Atherton.
Yes.
City of Belmont.
Yes.
City of Brisbane. Brisbane. City of Burlingame.
Yes.
Town of Colma.
Yes.
City of Daly City.
Yes.
City of East Palo Alto.
I'm blindly saying yes.
City of Foster City.
Yes.
City of Half Moon Bay.
Yes.
Town of Hillsborough.
Yes.
City of Los Banos.
Yes.
City of Menlo Park.
Yes.
City of Millbrae.
Yes.
City of Pacifica.
Yes.
Town of Portola Valley.
Yes.
City of Redwood City.
Yes.
City of San Bruno.
Yes.
City of San Carlos.
Yes.
City of San Mateo.
Yes.
City of South San Francisco. South San Francisco. Town of Woodside. The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to
Thank
item
you.
5, which is to the question of our participation in California Community Power. Jan, do you want to start this?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. We're coming here today to ask for your approval for PCE to participate in this new JPA, California Community Power, and to allow me to execute the JPA agreement. If we could go to the next slide. And the next one, a lot of duplicates there. Okay, so we'll talk about who's participating. We'll talk about our study session that we had on the 12th, the CEO meeting I attended on the 20th, the status of other CCAs approving this, some brief review of the benefits and the JPA agreement, the first project we're undertaking, and the timeline. The next slide, please. So there are 9 CCAs that are participating in forming this new Joint Powers Agency, all in Northern California. So San Francisco, Central Coast, which is former Monterey Bay, East Bay, Marin, us, Redwood Coast, San Jose, Silicon Valley, and Sonoma Clean Power. And the next slide shows what the overall load is of those CCAs. 30,000 gigawatt hours, which is about 40% of PG&E's load. So it's a large group, and that makes a difference because it means that we have a lot of buying power and just a lot of power overall. And it represents close to 3 million customer accounts. Next slide, please. So based on the discussion that we had in December at the board, board members asked that we have a study session specifically to talk about this, which we held on January 12th. We put together an FAQ on 39 topics covering all the questions that had been asked in December. And then in tonight's packet, you got an FAQ that actually had 40 topics because we had one more question that was added after the study session. And the study session, we focused on questions about labor, environmental safeguards, and risk. What is the risk to PCE if we're participating in a project, and what is the risk to PCE if we're not participating in a project? And you all were provided that FAQ in the packet, and hopefully you've all spent many, many hours studying that. But happy to answer any questions that you might have on that tonight. Next slide. So the CEOs of the 9 CCAs had a meeting on the 20th as we're getting ready to move forward on this JPA. And at that meeting, we discussed developing labor policies for CC Power, as well as policies on environmental issues and diversity. Labor being the one that was really important to our board and the environmental. And what CC Power is going to be doing is surveying all of the members to get copies of what all of their policies are in those areas. And the expectation is that at this first board meeting of CC Power, which will be in February, a set of principles will be considered. And those principles will include kind of how we'll look at labor and the environment and diversity. But as far as specific policies, the general wish of the group was that these be developed on a project by project basis, depending on what the project is. So for example, right now we're looking at a long duration energy storage project, which might be the kind of project that's appropriate for asking for a project labor agreement or something like that, because it's a big generation construction project. Other projects that we might look at could be trying to consolidate how we do our back office billing and try to reduce the costs that all of us are now paying to Calpine. Is there a way for us to change that and do something together? So because that's a different type of project, which wouldn't really, talking about a PLA in terms of a project like that wouldn't really make any sense. So the idea was that the policies would be developed based on the project and also based on which members might be participating in that given project to allow flexibility and to not tie the hands of the organization. So that's the plan going forward at this point in time. We go to the next slide. So this shows what the approval status is for joining CC Power. So 7 of the CCAs have received approval. Marin, Redwood Coast, Silicon Valley, San Jose, Sonoma, Central Coast, and East Bay. We are considering this tonight, and Clean Power SF, because of the process they need to use for their city, will not be able to get to full approval by their board if it is approved until mid-March. Next slide, please. So this is just a review of what the benefits are. Because this is such a large, this represents such a large amount of energy load, 40% of PG&E's size, we will have some economies of scale in contracting for power through this organization. We'll also be able to share the risk with multiple entities for developing large projects, possibly have shared financing. And there's also a lot of strategic value showing CCAs working together, because it provides, there is angst at the different regulatory agencies at the PUC when all of us are doing different things. There's angst at the ISO. And so by working together, we show that we have the ability to help the state with reliability issues with this project and other types of issues that come up in the state. And then it also demonstrates to legislators and regulators that we can work together to make things like this happen. Next slide, please. So the JPA agreement is, as we discussed before, just an agreement to form the organization, and the purpose is rather broad, to allow flexibility for what this group can do. Develop, acquire, construct, own, manage, contract for, engage in, finance, and or provide energy-related programs for the use of and by its members. Any member can exit the JPA, but they have to pay their pro rata share of any debts that have been incurred. And this JPA is being modeled after JPAs that have been put together for municipal utilities. In Northern California, there's NCPA, the Northern California Power Agency, a similar type of agency in Southern California, where municipal utilities band together to do larger projects than one individually could do, but is able to do through a joint effort. Next slide, please. The board will be composed of the CEOs of each member agency or the designee. We will have equal voting shares for determining what projects to move forward on. The majority of the attending directors can make a decision for simple changes, and 2/3 of the board is needed for significant changes. And any decision that requires an expenditure by PCE of more than 100,000 would of course come to our board for approval first. And also, we will, I'm happy to provide a regular report to the board on what's happening at CC Power, so you're totally up to date on what kinds of activities are going on. Next slide, please. The administrative costs will be shared equally. A contract general manager is expected to be, who will run the organization, which would be a part-time. We don't plan to have any staff at this JPA other than contract part-time employees. And the expected costs for these administrative costs are expected to be between 10 and 30,000. And at the CEO meeting, they estimate that it's actually going to be around 12,000 for this year. It'll probably be a little higher, so let's say 12 to 15. And that any kinds of costs larger than that are different than administrative costs will be assigned to the particular project. So unless we're a project participant, the cost to us for participating will be minimal. The next slide shows the 3 phases of how projects will be developed, and we went through this in a lot of detail at the study session. But basically the first phase is just exploring projects. And that's where we are right now with the long duration energy storage project. An RFO was issued to get bids on long duration energy storage. We signed a participation agreement to share the costs equally for putting out that RFO. The next phase will be a decision to move forward on the projects. And actually, I'll get into this a little bit more on what we're doing with the long duration storage, and that the costs for that would be allocated based on the percentage share of the project. And then the last phase is actual commitment to be a part of the project and have CC Power sign the JPA and then sign an agreement with CC Power that we would be part of that PPA. Next, please. So as we've discussed, the joint CCAs issued a RFO for long duration energy storage, looking for storage that has a minimum of 8 hours of discharge duration, and asking that those projects be commercially operating by 2026 with a minimum term of 10 years. Next, please. So the timeline for the multiple activities right now, the first part here is talking about the JPA agreement. So the CCA approval by their governing boards to join the JPA is happening in December and January. The expectation is that the JPA agreement will be signed by all of the CCAs that are participating tomorrow. So our hope is that if you are to make a positive decision to move forward on this tonight, that we will be signing that with everyone. A press release will be issued on Tuesday, notifying the world that this is happening. And then the first board meeting of this new JPA will be occurring in mid-February. As far as the timeline for the long duration energy storage project, the bids have come in and the technical folks and the procurement folks are in the midst of evaluating the bids that came in. And that evaluation is expected to be complete in March and a short list developed in March. And then for the rest of the spring and summer, the negotiations would occur with those different shortlisted projects, and a finalized PPA and all of the other participation and operating agreements would be finalized by October. So that's the timeline we're looking at here. So if we go to the next slide. So we're asking tonight for you to approve our participation in this JPA and to allow me to sign that JPA agreement tomorrow. We do encourage, I know that there are issues, and I've talked with many of you in detail about the concerns that you have, and the way for us to be able to influence how this organization is going to behave is for us to have a seat at the table. So if we're not there, we can't influence what it does. If we are there, then we can influence how this organization behaves, and it will be a good thing for us to be able to meet our goals to be part of this JPA. Happy to answer any questions.
Jeff, you're muted. I think if you're talking, Jeff, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I'll have to repeat all that again. I'm sorry. I know there's going to be a lot of opinions on this. I know there's going to be a lot of public opinion on this. So what I'd like to do is start with questions from board members for Jan and staff, and then we'll take public comment, and then we'll come back for board comments on the motion before we vote on it. So right now, are there questions from board members for Jan? I know we've already had a couple of reviews of this and have a lot of questions that we've already asked, but are there additional questions right now? And please use your raise hand feature in the software so I can see you. Rick Bonilla, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question, I think, for Jan regarding the January 12th study session that we held. And I heard everything you just said, Jan, and I think in describing the way that at the January 20th meeting, the members who were present at that meeting are expressing how they would like to proceed. But I think if you recall at our study session, I did ask you some important questions, and you did express a couple of commitments. And the first one was, would you take our policy, our labor policy, to that new Joint Powers Authority, CCP, and seek to have it instituted as a policy of that committee? And you indicated that you would. Also, I asked if you would then seek to have our labor policy implemented as part of RFPs as they're issued for response from developers to different projects. And you said you would. And then I said that we need a champion for these issues to represent our values, things that we have had since the beginning here at PCE, where going back from the beginning, labor has always been involved and supportive and helped us get where we are now. And you raised both fists, indicating you're our champion. And so is that all true, Jen?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions from the board? I don't see any hands up, so why don't we go to public comment? Does anyone from the public want to offer comments on this? I see James, Tom, Michael, Alex. James Ruiz Gomez, so why don't you go first?
All righty, thank you, Jeff, and honorable JPA members. Good to be before you tonight. My name is James Ruiz Gomez. I'm a business manager of the San Mateo Building Trade Council and first vice president of the San Mateo Labor Council. Both these organizations represent about 90 unions and about 100,000 workers here in San Mateo County. I'd like to start with a little background. Back when Supervisor Pine and Supervisor Groom started this, they put together an advisory committee of all the stakeholders. They felt labor was an important part of that stakeholder group because they wanted to ensure to us that it would not affect PG&E unionized workers' jobs at our PG&E plants and facilities. PG&E builds all their facilities 100% union under their CURE agreement. And we were ensured that no labor policy could be implemented until the JPA was started, just as we're learning now. We had to trust that our champions on the board would support us, and we had to trust that our CEO, Jan Peppers, would follow through on all that. And to no surprise, our labor champions on the board and the CEO supported that and created that labor policy. So if one of the JPA members is to offer a friendly amendment to this resolution, I would hope in the effort of solidarity that the other JPA members could go ahead and support that. As I stated, and labor has supported the PCE because PCE, of course, has supported labor. These other JPAs, these areas also have strong labor policies. So it's a surprise to me that they aren't willing to ensure that we have the strong labor policy as we do have here in San Mateo County. It's very important that these facilities are built with skilled and trained workforce and prevailing rate and under a community workforce agreement. When this JPA was first formed, we had brought in a developer to you guys that wanted to do long-term storage in San Mateo County, battery storage in San Mateo County, and build the project 100% union. So these developers are out there, and we strongly encourage you guys to strengthen the language and ensure that we have labor standards in this new JPA so we could continue to support the great work that the PCE is doing. As part of the advisory committee, we strongly supported all of the policies and ensuring that our members continue to utilize the PCE power. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you, James.
Yep.
Tom Enslow, go ahead.
Good evening. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. My name is Tom Enslow. I'm talking on behalf of IBEW Local 617. IBEW remains concerned that the proposed California Community Power JPA agreement is going to weaken or completely evade PCE's equity, labor, and environmental policies, as well as reduce local control over the types and locations of energy projects that PCE relies upon to provide its customer service. As currently drafted, the JPA creates a huge loophole to PCE's longstanding policies to ensure it procures energy from companies that commit to paying their workers a fair wage and demonstrates commitments to hiring a local, diverse, and inclusive workforce. For example, agenda item 7 tonight discusses recommendations for an equity policy, that policy would not apply to any of the California community power projects. Local 617 also has concerns that after staff negotiated this JPA agreement without input from the board, it then met last week with other JPA participants to discuss a strategy that undermines the concerns raised by board's members. According to tonight's presentation, the JPA is now proposing that instead of adopting clear policies up front, it proposes that any labor, equity, and environmental policies be negotiated on a project-by-project basis by participating members. This is an empty response to our concerns. These policies are not adopted up front. PCE is going to have to spend resources and political capital on a case-by-case basis with little likelihood that these policies will be included as members are desperate to have a particular project go through. Furthermore, it's unclear from this new policy whether if all CCAs participating in an individual project would have to unanimously agree or just a majority, as would be the case for a broader policy. Should you move forward with this agreement, we urge you to ensure that PCE's representatives be directed to immediately propose and lobby for workforce policies to be adopted by the JPA for all of its projects. That's the only way we can ensure that the values of the board are going to be moved forward with this broader JPA. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, Michael Clauson is next. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, hi, thank you. This is Michael Clausen. I'm a member of the CAC, but I'm speaking just as a private individual. With the caveat that I support the previous two people's comments about the need for strong and equitable labor standards and policies. And assuming that that can be accomplished, I think this is a great idea. I think that there can be a lot gained by collaborating and working closely on certain projects with our fellow CCAs in Northern California. I think as was mentioned, it can give us economies of scale advantages and power of scale advantages in terms of dealing with the CPUC and the legislature, et cetera. So I'm a strong supporter, assuming that the labor issues can be worked out in an equitable manner.
Thanks, Michael. Alex Landsberg, go ahead.
My name is Alex Landsberg. I am Research and Advocacy Director for the San Francisco electrical construction industry. I'm calling in today because we've been engaged in this discussion in San Francisco. And I thought it was absolutely important for you to understand where, at least where my understanding is of where the city's decision makers are. First and foremost, I kind of want to just set the stage. And this is something that hasn't been said. And I think people kind of danced around it at the study session. But the fact is we're going to build the clean energy economy, and whatever we end up making the Green New Deal sector by sector, as we establish new organizations to meet our needs, we need to ensure that our values are baked right into their DNA. As we can hear from the general manager's report, that's not the case here. And this JPA fails that test. Obviously, I want to echo everything that Mr. Enslow said because we've been working with him as well. Just a little something for the directors to consider. The Everything about this process has shown you exactly what you're going to be facing down the line. Staff are making decisions. They're running forward, bringing things to you almost fully baked, and then jamming you at the end of the day, saying take it or leave it. It's not a position I imagine any decision maker wants to be in. And frankly, this is something that has been troubling San Francisco's elected and appointed officials greatly during this process. I know for a fact that a majority of our Public Utilities Commission has deep reservations about the way this has been hatched and the way that this is proceeding. And I imagine other members of the Board of Supervisors who will ultimately be authorizing whether or not the city joins this do as well. Back to where I started on this thing. So much of what we've been doing, all of us, I think, in trying to advance clean energy and the energy economy, has been about making sure that we have all these systems in place to achieve the goals that we say that we want. And in order to do that, the organizations that we form need to reflect those right in there. Right now, it doesn't, and I'm asking that you direct your GM to make sure that it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Steve Booker, go ahead.
Hey, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. First and foremost, I want to thank James and Tom and Michael and Alex for their work. I'm a member of the Community Advisory Committee for Peninsula Clean Energy. I'm also the political director and community affairs liaison for International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Local 617. And I'm here tonight to strongly recommend that Peninsula Clean Energy insists that CC Powers adopts a workforce policy similar to, if not identical to, PCE. When you adopt workforce policies such as this, you ensure that these projects will be built with highly skilled men and women from the community that earn fair wages. Many of these come from disadvantaged communities and also, like myself, are returning vets. In the essence of time, I just want to thank you again for allowing me to speak tonight, and I yield.
Thanks, Stephen. Take care. Mark Roost, go ahead.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so the large, as above, so below. On the larger scale, the climate policy initiative that Biden announced yesterday and signed presidential executive order is throughout every aspect of that document says with union labor. And so, we're going to try, from the top down now, we're going to tip the balance of power against those who try to disempower unions. And so I suggest it would be good to, it's necessary actually to join in, be part of this. And I'll say that I took a union leadership course after they tried to fire me at Ford after I got injured the first week on the job.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, I don't see any other hands up for public comment, so I will turn back to the board for their comments. Rick DeGolia's got his hand up. Go ahead, Rick.
Rick, you're on mute.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first I want to thank everyone that's just spoken. I think your comments are really serious. I totally understand them. I'm guessing that you know more than I know about some of the other CCAs and you're worried about them. And I hear that. I 100% agree that we should pursue and push CCP to adopt policy 10 that we have. It probably is the strongest labor force policy in the CCA movement, and yet it's a very flexible policy. We've seen this policy implemented. We've used this policy, and in almost every case, we've had a 5 PLA level agreement with all of our deals. We were unable to do that with the BART controlled wind deal that we recently agreed to go forward with, even though it didn't have the PLA, the 5-level PLA we wanted. But I think that shows the strength of the policy, that it has flexibility and that it's powerful, and that, you know, we can decide when to go into a deal and when to not go into a deal. And that flexibility, I think, is something we can use to convince the other CCAs to adopt exactly the same policy or a very similar to policy to what we adopted. And I think we should do that. I don't think that's a condition to approving this CCP JPA agreement. And just think about it for us. I mean, our JPA agreement didn't have what is our workforce policy in it. That's a policy we adopted. And our JPA agreement is a pretty boilerplate kind of agreement. And I understand that this agreement, and we've gone through it now in a study session and a couple different board discussions, that this agreement's also a very boilerplate agreement. The biggest concern I had was to make sure that if a CCA that joins CCP chooses not to go into a deal, that CCA is going to be protected and not subject to liability because of those that do go into a deal. Or that if somebody drops out of a deal, that there's protection for the CCA itself. And we've been assured by legal counsel that that this JPA uses the same protective language that we use in our JPA agreement to provide each of our cities with that kind of protection, which is a statutory level of protection. So I've been convinced that's sufficient, and it's, for me, it's good to go. I'm supportive of doing this deal. I think aggregating the CCA buying power to create an entity that is as large as PG&E currently is very powerful. And I think we need to do that to both demonstrate our power and to start to have some influence beyond the PCE alone. And I think we're going to have to do that in this huge looming fight in the legislature around the PCIA. I think on this issue, we don't have to, and there's no reason to force the inclusion of our policy 10 into the JPA. That's not in our JPA, but we should bring that to this board as a policy that should be brought up at the next board meeting, and it should be discussed as soon as this JPA is formed. And that would be very similar to what we did.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you, Rick. Rick Bonilla is up next. Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I want to thank Rick DeGolia, because basically he said what I wanted to say and even more. So thank you very much for that, Rick. Also, I want to thank all the new board members tonight and the alternates. This is a great night to be here because we're going to be discussing some really core issues here. Regarding my thoughts on going forward, I do believe that we should affiliate tonight and give Jan the ability to attend that signing event tomorrow, or whatever it takes to sign and become a member. I would like her to see her have the full backing of everyone on this board of directors to do that. But in fact, I would like to make a motion to do that when the time comes for that. That said, though, I would also like to offer a friendly amendment at that time to just kind of put some parameters around what Rick just spoke about and what I will talk about later. But it just is a question of how we ask our staff to go about seeking to include our policies and our concerns, not in the JPA agreement, but actually as part of the policy. They called it principles. I believe policies is the right word. It's stronger. It's a more governmental leading word about how they intend to do business. And that's all the policy is. It's a statement about how you would like to do business. But it's not hard and fast, as Rick said. Okay, it allows for some flexibility. But as I asked Jan, and she answered earlier, she agreed that she would seek to do that. She agreed that she would seek to have language in RFP, that she would be our champion, and I believe that. But I would just like Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. And I think to just have some codification for our own purposes that gives some guidance to our staff about how to do that, about what our desires are, what we want them to do is important. So I'm going to let everybody else speak, but I would like to say that I am offering a motion and a friendly amendment to bring those parameters. Thank you.
If that's the motion, I would like to second it.
Let's hear the rest of the discussion, and then Rick, you could. I will defer to Rick to make the motion with the amendment, and we can hear it at that time. How about we wait for that?
Thank you.
Ann Schneider, go next, please.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. Rick DeGoya talked about how the creation of CC Power will assist us in working and hopefully reducing the PCIA. I think that's a great idea. I don't quite understand how that mechanism would work. I don't know if someone could address that. At the February meeting of the CC Power Board, it's my understanding that the policies that Rick Bonilla has alluded to will be discussed, and I'm glad that Rick is happy that, you know, labor issues are going to get brought up. I would like to hear the same assurances that a wide range of environmental considerations are also brought up when we are choosing new renewables, because not all renewable projects are environmentally equal. And again, in prime raptor, prime endangered species condor territory, and staff did not even ask the question. I just want to be assured, if I'm going to vote on this, and I would like to vote on this, that in the future we always ask the question. If wind power is going up, whether it's in the ocean, whether it's along a migratory bird path, or wherever it might be located, that we are asking the environmental questions. Otherwise, every environmental group has to keep an eye on what's happening specifically in their area. And environmental groups are not equally spread out across the areas where these projects might get sited. So it really weakens our lovely policy on protecting the environment within PCE if we have to go project by project. That's my one big reservation on that. I support the labor. I really think in light of the Black Lives Matter movement that equity has moved up, and we really need to look at equity not just on low-income communities, but equity across the types of businesses that we're supporting. But if Jan could tell me that what she's told Rick she will do for labor, she will do for environment, then I can support this, along with Rick's amendment.
Okay, thanks, Ann. Jan, do you want to speak to that now, or we could talk about that later?
I can speak to that, and I did bring that up as well at the meeting. I brought up the labor issues and the environmental issues. If there is specific language that you would like to see in a policy, I don't think we at PCE actually have I could be wrong, a specific environmental policy. But I mean, I of course support that, and I think the other folks at CC Power support that. I don't believe that anyone would not agree with that.
I appreciate that. On the Sierra Club California Environment and Climate Change, they are still discussing the Ivanpah solar power farm out in the desert in prime desert tortoise territory. So every location is going to have its own set of environmental. I'll see what I can come up with, Jan, and if there's other members of PCE who would like to work with me, I'm happy to see what I can do. But thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that we would need to pass something at PCE that's a specific environmental policy that you would want me to present to CC Power. And then also, I think you were talking about supplier diversity, and we are also working on that. In fact, we have I don't know if our RFP has gone out yet or not, but we're working on strengthening our supplier diversity policies within PCE, and there's a report that we need to submit to the Public Utilities Commission on March 1st. All load serving entities need to present that as to what our plan is for increasing diversity. And of course, tonight, later on, we're going to be hearing the CAC's proposal for a statement on equity.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Donna Colson, go ahead.
Donna, you're on mute.
Sorry, iPad thing. But thanks. I am really comfortable that the staff has vetted the numerous concerns that have been raised, both liability, labor, environment, and I am actually comfortable that this policy tonight and this action tonight honors our strategic objectives while giving the staff the discretion that it needs to make practical business decisions. Having a seat at the table is really important, as probably every woman and most minority people that are sitting on this call can tell you. Not having a seat at the table doesn't allow you to push forward your agenda and your policy. So I think it is very important that we step up and join and work from the inside to make the change that we need and help guide the organization in a way that mirrors the work we've done. So I will support this.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Julia Mates, go ahead.
Thank you. I also support this. I do appreciate the discussions we've had, and I think that once the motion is made, including some of the language that the two RICs have spoken, I think that would be good. But I did want to also speak to some of the comments that the public commenters made, as well as I think some of the directors over the course of a few meetings, with regard to the fact that the board wasn't completely aware of how far along this CCP creation was, or even aware that we were putting out an RFO. And so I would like to offer that maybe Jan could do, I know you said in your presentation, Jan, you'd be willing to do a regular update. And I'm wondering, maybe in the beginning, you just do a monthly update with your other CEO update and let us know how things are going, even if there's been no status change, just kind of let us know if you had a meeting or if you met with the other CEOs or if there is an RFO going out, certainly things like that, so that we and the public feel like we are more aware of what's happening. And then again, after it's established for a while, we can always back it off to a quarterly report. But I think that would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you, Julia. Dave Pine is up next. Go ahead, Dave.
Thanks. No, I want to just reiterate the point that maybe some others have made, but it's an important one. We can't influence the direction of this new JPA if we're not a part of it. And I'm really proud of our labor record. And we talk a lot about being a leader. And we have been a leader on labor policies. So I think this creates a great opportunity for us to be, a leader on labor and other policies in the context of the new JPA. And when you think of the other JPA partners, the Contra Costas, the Alamedas, the San Franciscos, there's no reason they shouldn't follow our lead. So I am optimistic that if Jan makes the case that others will agree, and that we can get a good outcome here.
Thanks, Dave. Tom Faria, go ahead.
Thank you. Regarding the labor agreements and support. I'm very pleased to see that as being a part of PCE. The other member who would be joining this JPA, do they all have the same or similar labor policies? I think that gives us a pretty good idea of how successful we can be in promoting our policy if all other JPAs have similar philosophies. All the other members of the JPA, I should say, have similar philosophies and policies.
Jan, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I think we probably have the most explicit policy. At our meeting, I'm fairly certain that everyone requires prevailing wage for projects. So I don't think there's going to be any dispute about that. And for, large solar projects and things like that we've done where we've had PLAs, the other CCAs have done the same. So I don't believe that we really diverge in these areas. I think, but we'll find out. So everyone's policies are being collected, and we'll be discussing those at the first meeting of the JPA in mid-February. And I don't think it's going to be a problem. So I'm optimistic about it. And I also hope that in response to the gentleman from San Francisco who spoke, I hope that San Francisco also joins, because San Francisco has similar policies as ours, or similar, wants to have similar progress as us. And if San Francisco is not at the table, then they aren't going to be able to help make that happen. So I just wanted to add that in as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Tom. Laura Palmer-Lohan, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And thank you again for this discussion tonight. And, Jan, your commitment to the values that were expressed. I also appreciate the input from the public this evening. And I echo the comments made by my colleagues earlier. One of the things that when we were working on the strategic planning that I recall that was really important was PCE being able to show a leadership position. And I think this is an opportunity for us to demonstrate that leadership by effectively codifying, tonight with the proposed changes to the resolution, that our policies are effectively a statement of our values, and ensuring that we, bring those to the fore and continue to influence the industry as it's in its nascent and burgeoning spaces. And I agree that with the influx of President Biden and the new policies that are coming forth, that we have an opportunity to make sure that we put the ship in the right direction here. So I'm also in support of joining this and making sure that we remain focused and clarify our values around these various policies that were discussed. So thank you. Jeff, I have a hunch you might be on mute.
Okay, Jeff just pinged me to say that his internet is intermittent, so I will take over until he comes back, because it doesn't look like he's on the line. I'm sorry, I hadn't been paying attention to know whether Pradeep or Sam was next to speak.
It's
Sam. Okay, Sam, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you now. You were broken up for a while.
I think that's pretty that breaking up, but
okay, go ahead, Sam.
okay. I want to thank the members of the public who expressed their views and opinion, and I think that is extremely valuable. As a new member, I appreciate staff for the study session and all the detailed answers to the questions that have been, I feel like I got brought up to speed rather quickly. And I understand that at the current moment, we cannot influence how the GPA is gonna be formed, but I read policy 10 of the PCE, and I'm confident that this board and this organization will continue to pursue labor contracts and making sure that everything that we as a PCE get into will take that into consideration. And I agree with my colleagues that you have to be on the table to really make a difference and to have an influence. So, and listening to Rick Bonilla and what he would probably bring in his amendment, I will be supportive of this resolution.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Pradeep, do you have connection?
Me? Can you hear me?
We could hear the last comment.
Okay, I just wanted to make two comments. One, I think Peninsula Clean Energy has as a basic tenets the environmental goals as well as equity in terms of labor and the development of labor force for this clean energy. The other comment I have is that technically, from the technical point of view, in order to meet our goals of 2025 and 2030, in terms of clean energy 24/7, we need to have large projects like storage and battery storage like we are looking at right now, plus other renewable energy sources. And it will be very, very necessary for us to have vehicles like this JPA in order to acquire those large projects in time for us to meet our goals. So from technology and technical point of view, I encourage the board of directors to see their way through and approve this kind of arrangement. It'll be very necessary, and it's fortunate that we are getting a seat while the JPA is being formed so we can influence them. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Pradeep. I don't see any other hands up. So I'm going to come back to Rick Bonilla and ask you, Rick, to restate your motion. You're muted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. First thing I want to do is make a motion to support affiliating with CCP. And to that, I would like to add a friendly amendment. So I think we already had a second, and then I will describe the friendly amendment.
I second that motion.
Okay, so just to clarify, the motion is to affiliate with CCP and approve Peninsula, I guess approve the JPA agreement for CCP and have the CEO enter into that agreement. And what is the specific of the amendment?
Okay, so I just have two paragraphs, okay? Let me read a little bit of supporting information, then I'll say the actual amendment. So I'm concerned that the framework of the California Community Power JPA could weaken local control over the terms and types of procurement agreements with, that are entered into by PCE. We are just one vote out of 9 members with no provisions to weight votes based on the size of the CCA. While we can decide not to participate in a project if we don't like the terms, that puts this board in a horrible position where it could be pitted between agreeing to a contract that is not consistent with our labor and environmental values, and or saying no to a critical energy storage project where there may not be a clear alternative option. And that would be a terrible position to be in. We must work to ensure that CCP adopts policies ahead of time to ensure that it will negotiate contracts that contain terms consistent with our values and goals. So here's the amendment. I move to amend the proposed approval to include direction to staff that their first order of business at the CCP will be to propose and lobby for the adoption of formal CCP policies to ensure that it will seek to award contracts and negotiate contract terms consistent with our values and goals regarding environmental sustainability, local hire, support of local business, support of union labor and apprenticeship programs that create employment opportunities, support for maintaining area construction wage standards through the prevailing wage, support of the use of a skilled and trained workforce, and support for inclusive business practices. So basically, this doesn't lock anybody into anything. It just provides some guidelines indicating how the board would like staff to pursue these policies at CCP in terms of seeking to form a policy similar to ours, if not the same, at that particular new JPA, and also to include language into RFP so that proposers understand what they need to do to propose. And that's basically it. Thank you.
So Rick, let me just clarify it. You don't both make an amendment and you make the motion and the amendment. So you're making a motion to approve, have Jen enter into this JPA agreement with CCP, and for the first order of business at the CCP board meeting to bring up this policy issue.
Actually, since they may not win the first time around, Rick, I'm proposing that this be something they focus on. Ray, you're not muted. Ray, could you mute? Thank you. So I propose that this, since they may not win the first round, this is something they continue to focus on, because as you go through different possible power purchase agreements, RFPs being issued, there may be different opportunities. And that board may come to see the value of them, if not at first, then later.
Okay. Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second this motion.
Okay.
Carlos Romero.
That's Carlos. Okay, thank you. And is there discussion? Rick, I wonder if for the purposes of simplicity for the staff to handle this, if it would be a friendly substitution for your language for Jan to take essentially what is that one paragraph policy statement of ours, you know, in policy 10, our workforce policy.
Yes, that's what we're looking for. I actually have it all written
that would be easier for her to do.
Rick, I actually have it all written out. I can just forward it. Okay.
Well, yeah, she's got policy 10. I mean,
yeah,
and I think you're right. It may not win the first time around, but
what I'm talking about is the effort directing staff to actually do it. Okay, I know Jan said she would, but I feel like, you know, we need to make sure that there is some direction, you know, indicating that this is the board's desire and focus in our participation with this board.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Colleen?
Yes, thank you. I had a question. We had the one board member who mentioned concern about wildlife. Would that not have to be on also as an amendment before we vote, or that would be excluded?
Rick, I could add that to mine. I believe Jan said she could do that, and I can add it to my language that I can send in.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen.
I think it's already in there. If I remember, you said something about goals regarding our environmental sustainability. I think you have it in there.
Right. So what I think is maybe tomorrow morning I can talk with Ann a little bit, make sure that that's sufficient for her needs. If everybody else agrees with what she spoke about, then we can go forward, and I can add some language to this to make it meet all those needs.
Okay, great. And I'm just looking at the time. We've got 2 more significant issues on the agenda. So I'd like to move pretty quickly to a vote. Ann Schneider has her hand up.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Rick. I'll be available in the morning. Chances are sustainability is broad enough to cover it, but let me think on it overnight. But thank you.
Okay, good. Well, then I'll send it as it is tonight, and then after we talk, if we change it, I'll send it again. Thanks.
Okay. So, Dave Pine.
Yeah, I think Rick, you should read the language again. If we're going to vote on an amendment tonight, we got to vote on.
Okay.
We can't have vote on something we're not going to see again.
Let me read just the proposed language here. I move to amend the proposed approval to include direction to staff that their first order of business at the CCP will be to propose and lobby for the adoption of formal CCP policies to ensure that it will seek to award contracts and negotiate contract terms consistent with our values and goals regarding environmental sustainability, local hire, support of local business, support for union labor and apprenticeship programs that create employment opportunities, support for maintaining area construction wage standards, support for the use of a skilled and trained workforce, and support for inclusive business practices. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for reading it again. I think what you're saying is you want Jan to evangelize our policies, and you've inventoried them in your
Yes.
statement.
Right. Yeah, it's basically our policy 10. Okay, and I can say that, I can add it here if that needs to be.
We ought to go with what you read.
Okay, good.
Okay, I don't see any further comments. Can we do a roll call, please, Ann?
Yes. Okay. All right. So if you would please announce your approval or disapproval of the motion with the amendment when I announce your jurisdiction. County of San Mateo.
Yes.
County of San Mateo.
Yes.
Town of Atherton.
Yes.
City of Belmont.
Yes.
City of Brisbane.
Yes.
City of Burlingame.
Yes.
Town of Colma.
Yes.
City of Daly City.
Yes.
City of East Palo Alto.
Yes.
City of Foster City.
Yes.
City of Half Moon Bay.
Yes.
Town of Hillsborough.
Yes.
City of Los Banos.
Yes.
City of Menlo Park.
Yes.
City of Millbrae.
Yes.
City of Pacifica.
Yes.
Town of Portola Valley.
Yes.
Thank you. City of Redwood City.
Yes.
City of San Bruno.
Yes.
City of San Carlos.
Yes.
City of San Mateo.
Yes.
City of South San Francisco.
Yes.
Town of Woodside. The motion passes unanimously.
Great. Okay, thank you. Jeff, welcome back.
Sorry about that.
For item 6.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for carrying on without me. I actually had spoken to Rick about his amendment earlier, so I'm actually comfortable with it. Okay, on to item 6. This is a presentation from the San Mateo County Climate Alliance.
Rick, I'm happy to, Jeff, I'm happy to introduce the.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Okay. What I'd like to do at this point now is to update the board on a new initiative that a number of board members and community advocates and staff from PCE and the Office of Sustainability have been thinking about. And this initiative is called the San Mateo County Climate Alliance. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of walk through our thinking about what this alliance would do. And when I conclude, Ray Mueller, council member from Menlo Park, will add his perspective. And then Carolyn Blatty from Sustainability can add her perspective as well. So again, the purpose here is to bring the board up to date on this initiative and receive your feedback on whether we're going in the right direction and whether it would be something that would be attractive to your cities. So you can go to the next slide. So, starting at the top, what we in when we talk about a climate alliance is a collaborative effort between the Office of Sustainability, Peninsula Clean Energy, and those cities in the county who have a really big appetite for making serious change to combat climate change. So in other words, it's really three legs of the stool here: Office of Sustainability, PCE, and cities who are willing and are in a position to really push the envelope. And what we want to do through this collaborative is just create an environment where these holders can work together and pioneer new ideas and set examples and demonstrate that things can be accomplished that perhaps at first blush seem out of reach. The basic principle is that local government has to lead on climate action. That ultimately, we need to be always ahead of the state and ahead of the country, and we have to really show the way. So through this idea of forming this collaborative, we think we could create a vehicle to really accelerate, bold local action. So let's go to the next slide. So, we're motivated to do this because the climate crisis is terribly urgent. Our minds these days are on COVID, but meanwhile, the Earth continues to overheat. 2020, I believe, was tied for the hottest year in record, and something like 7 of the last 8 years have been the hottest in history. We've seen here personally in San Mateo County what that means with wildfire. We've seen in other parts of the country these intense storms. Sea level rise, my personal favorite, is happening and is irreversible. So it's important from time to time to just calibrate our efforts. We have a crisis to address. Next slide. So, we're doing 2 things in the county. First, we're trying to mitigate our carbon and reduce our carbon reductions. And we've had a lot of success in that. We have a lot more to do. Then the other side of the equation is adapting to the changes that are baked into the environment. But the focus tonight is on the mitigation and on what extra steps localities can take to reduce their emissions. Go ahead to the next one. So as I mentioned, we are very proud of what we've accomplished in the county. Peninsula Clean Energy was a game changer. We're now 100% carbon-free power. That's had just an enormous impact on reducing carbon emissions in the county. With the REACH codes, which was no small effort, we have made tremendous headway on that. There's about 40 municipalities now that have adopted REACH codes, and 10 of them are right here in San Mateo County. So we've really pushed it. We're very impressed with that. There's a lot going on in the energy efficiency arena with various programs, including the BayREN offering. And as you all know, we're doing a variety of programs to push clean vehicles and electric vehicles. Go ahead, next. But we have just so much more to do. We have so much more to do. And we can look around and find inspiration from Menlo Park and from some other jurisdictions. So #1 priority is phasing out fossil fuels, natural gas from our homes and buildings. That's something like 40% of our carbon footprint. Electric vehicles for all, that's another huge sector of our carbon footprint. If we can't get people to drive EVs, we need them to drive in different or commute in different ways. And with all our work, we have to integrate equity and engage, you know, all members of the community. Okay. Next slide. So here's our thinking about how this climate alliance might work. And again, really looking forward to receiving your feedback on this. So as I've said earlier, the alliance would be made up of the Office of Sustainability, Peninsula Clean Energy, and then cities and unincorporated San Mateo County, you know, if you're really committed to doing serious work in this area. And that commitment to really pushing the envelope could be potentially reflected in two things. One is adopting a climate emergency resolution along the lines that San Mateo County has already done. But more important, we would like to see members of this collaborative commit to adopting one very high impact climate measure a year. So those would be the type of things I quickly reviewed in the prior slide, like adopt a replace on burnout ordinance, or adopt a very aggressive EV charging rollout schedule in their community. So the idea here is we're trying to bring together those who are in a position to really push. We could potentially have an advisory group with various local nonprofits and other agencies available to advise the group. I list some of the potential names here. And the staffing question is not totally clear, but we think it will need some sort of support to make this collaborative successful. We go to the next slide. So, you know, what would this collaborative do? Which is, I guess, the core question, right? And listed some of those things here. You know, it would be a forum for thought leaders where leaders in the field could share their ideas and best practices. It would be an environment where model ordinances could be developed. It would be a venue where the participants could discuss potentially novel financing options for attacking climate change. The participants might want to share work across the membership so that everyone is doing different things and kind of paving the way in different areas. The area of sequestration is a really ripe one that this group could work on. So again, it would be a forum for this group of leaders to continue to come up with new ways to reduce carbon emissions. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. And if anyone is in the position to really show leadership, it's San Mateo County. I'm getting an echo. We've paved the way with Peninsula Clean Energy. When we formed Peninsula Clean Energy, we came out of the chute with all 20 cities right from the beginning. I mean, I remember distinctly, we thought, well, perhaps we might get 10 or 12 cities, but we got all 20. So, you know, it shows that there's a real appetite for leadership. There's a growing youth movement. And there's, I believe, a real appetite to really take bold measures. So we're just about wrapped up now. Go ahead to the next slide. So, yeah, I could go ahead and summarize and turn it over to Ray and Carolyn. But in sum, the San Mateo Climate Alliance would be, you know, a collaborative of leaders who want to, you know, show particularly aggressive actions to fight the climate crisis, and that can set the example for other cities in the county and, in fact, other cities around the state and country. So let me turn it over to Ray Mueller and Carolyn to add their perspectives. Ray, do you want to go next?
Sure, thank you, Dave. And just want to thank all of you here at PCE, all the board members and professional staff for having me. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you all this evening, and incredibly impressed with the attention to detail and the work that you all do here. I mean, very candidly, just getting to the bones of what we're talking about, speaking to my my colleagues as council members, I think we've all been in the position where we have been in a city council meeting at a goal setting, and we've wanted to do great work and been told by our professional staff that we just don't have the resources this year to do that. Or we've wanted to do things, but we hear from our constituents, well, you know, there's no other city doing this right now. Why are you doing it here? And really the idea around the Climate Alliance is the idea that there is power in being first adopters. There's power in being those who are pathfinders, and that there's power in twos and powers in three. And so the idea is to take a group of city, and not every city, it also recognizes that not every city is the same. There are some cities that just, for the political climate that they're in, those councils aren't going to be able to be first adopters, but they still want to be able to move climate policy in their cities. So the idea is, can we bring together a group of cities that has, at the present time, the political climate such where they can go ahead and move strong climate policy in their cities. We've gotten to the point in San Mateo County where what's left on our list are going to be big lifts. They're going to be hard things to get done in our cities. They're going to be hard things to get done in terms of the resources that we need to dedicate to them. Some of these things are going to need EIRs that will be expensive. And those EIRs, as we all know from the many times that we've opted into a county EIR, it makes more sense to do it with a bunch of different cities together. So the idea is, can we bring together and find a group of cities that just has that perfect alchemy that they can move things right now, give some resources to that effort so that those cities can be pathfinders, create lessons learned, create those EIRs with the county, create those resources to share that they can go ahead and propagate into the other cities. And it's especially important right now, as Dave mentioned, because we have so many challenges happening in our county. There are so many, our resources are getting pulled so many different important directions, but we can't let this climate challenge fall to the wayside. And we have to, and when I say that, it's with no disrespect to what our current effort is, but we have so much more to do, so much more to confront that challenge, and we have to keep pushing further. So that's really the idea and the effort behind this. It's really to go ahead and create that power to pathfind and combine resources and do it in a way that then can be shared with the rest of the county. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all about it. I'm excited about this, but it really is to empower what's going to be tough work. If I was earlier in the meeting this evening, you all were looking at the REACH codes, and then the next phase was EV chargers. And the way that you would think about this is you would have a full defined climate action plan, which cities are developing now, and we have one in Menlo Park. And within that climate action plan, there are many more columns of things to take off the checklist. And this group would be looking at that well-defined climate action plan and saying, we're going to pick the hard ones and figure it out. And so we can share those lessons learned with the rest of the group. So with that, I appreciate the time to speak to you all, and thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave, for giving me the opportunity.
Thanks, Ray. Really appreciate your contribution to this. Carolyn, do you want to add your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, board members, and Happy New Year. Carolyn Blady, I'm the Director of the Office of Sustainability, San Mateo County, and we're supportive of this Climate Alliance model because we think there's really a place for jurisdictions who want to work together to really prove out innovative climate solutions and really test out and show feasibility for these high impact strategies. And I think coming together in a collaboration, for those that are really interested in doing it, could be really powerful. With Supervisor Pine's leadership, this Tuesday, San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, we adopted our Government Operations Climate Action Plan for to reach carbon neutrality in our operations by 2030. And it's a really ambitious goal. And it's this type of collaboration where I see that we could really demonstrate feasibility, move large scale initiatives forward. So we're definitely supportive. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. So we'd love to get some feedback from the group. It's still, it's still a work in progress. There may in the future be a financial request to PCE to provide some funding to support this, likely modest, perhaps $75,000, maybe $150,000 over 2 years. That's not really on the agenda tonight, but if this does have legs and support, that might be something we would come back with at a later time. So, Jeff, do I turn it back to you?
Do you want me to run the discussion from here, or do you want to? It's up to you.
You can go ahead and recognize speakers.
Okay. I'll just start by saying I've been sitting in with this group for several meetings as well, not all of them. And I just want to point out Diane Bailey from Menlo Spark was really instrumental in getting this off the ground as well. And I think I think Ray and Dave actually described it pretty well. Just the idea that a handful of our communities might be sort of in a better position to take some of these steps, and we just wanted to start thinking about how to energize those communities and then sort of give them a chance to share what we're learning, or hopefully we are learning with the rest of the county, and really anyone else. So yeah, again, just not taking any action tonight. Wanted to let you know what's been happening and just give you an idea, a heads up, and just hear what people have to say about it. And so I will take comments on this. Mark Roost, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I can see the possibility of doing a lot of projects that are very large in scope and either directly or indirectly related to getting electricity. Things like group rapid transit with electrical power from solar panels on the top. Maybe that's too far out. But I guess one question is there any possibility that you guys might think about funding technology development? And otherwise, generally, I think it's a great idea. That's it.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. And yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of ideas to sift through, and that's certainly add that to the list. But yes, definitely. Thank you. And Schneider, go ahead.
Thank you. I love the idea. I had been thinking of reaching out to the mayors of North County cities to find a couple of resiliency projects, sequestration projects that individually were so small, trying to get grant funding would be difficult, but together we could do it. We are one of the last cities to get our climate action plan approved with the EIR last October, and our environment committee, our citizens committee, is going through right now and trying to prioritize actions for residents, the government, and the business sector. But my personal goal this year is to get a tree inventory done. We haven't done one since 1992. Other cities are by far more advanced in trees. Any of us who also serve on Noise Roundtable are learning that trees and vegetation can also help with noise as well as particulate. So I would love to jump in with both feet, but I want to do trees. And, you know, I look at Menlo Park or Palo Alto or Mountain View, Los Altos with their lovely tree coverage. And I come back to my city I grew up in, and I'm so sad that we've lost so many trees. So trees are my sequestration action, and to institutionalize it with an annual planting commitment, and a bunch of other related ordinances that we don't have up here that other cities have. And I would add to that, that just looking at the Caltrain electrification program, the cities that had existing heritage tree ordinances received more trees, replacing trees cut, than a city like mine did with no tree ordinance. So I would like to see the transportation agencies join us in both noise and carbon sequestration project. So thank you for this. I support it. And I'll go talk to my city. I'm already talking to my city manager on this.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ann. Rod, Dr. Rod, go ahead.
Yes, I'm in support of this as well. I think this is something that I've been looking for and searching for in terms of PCE. I think we've been doing great at legislative and doing some work that is in conjunction with policies. But I was looking for something that is basic grassroots community, and we could actually engage youth, students. And I think this is where it starts, is we gotta plant that seed so that young folks and young people can understand that there are alternatives to addressing climate change, and we got to change the values. So I'm glad that this is something on our table, and this is something I'm going to be introducing to my city. I think this is something that is profound, and I'm glad that we're getting involved in this collaboration.
Great, thank you. Harvey, go ahead.
I'm highly supportive of this initiative. I think it's a wonderful idea. Half Moon Bay, which I represent, is certainly a victim of sea level rise, so there's much that we can do in that direction. Resilience projects, we've been talking lately about microgrids for electricity as well as for sewage treatment. We're going to be discussing REACH codes at our next city council meeting. I'm certainly going to bring this up as a way for Half Moon Bay to participate in helping reduce carbon. So it's a great idea, and I'm very appreciative of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Giselle, go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. So I've also been a part of this group for about a year, having conversations when we were very early trying to figure out what was the there. And I think the thing that I like, and coming from the perspective of a city like Redwood City, who's dealing with so many urgent issues like housing and homelessness, on top of all the other urgent issues we're all dealing with, is that it gives the opportunity for those cities who are poised to leap forward and to learn and to iterate. And then at a time when each city is able to make room for these policies, to hand them something that is a little bit more baked. I worked on our climate action plan and our REACH codes last year with Ian Bain, who used to be on this committee, and it was a huge lift. We don't have an environmental affairs commission like many of your cities do. So we were doing the work ourselves and with staff. And one of the things that Diane had talked about is how this group could have helped with providing, some more templates and models. And I actually am very much in favor of the staff support. I think it's exactly the staff support that cities need to get through some of these policy-making decisions. So I think it's a great idea. I think it'll help us, if not at each individual city level, but overall as a county to accelerate and create a mold that we can use. And then there was the mention of technology. I will say that did come up at one point in one of our meetings, because there's a lot of great technologies being developed. We just received a very hefty RENA goal. Like, let's see how we can layer that into some of the buildings that are going to get built. And so we can accelerate the adoption in the market for those technologies.
Great, thank you, Giselle. James, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I think this is a fantastic idea. I like how this approach would be more grassroots and more community-oriented, engaging students and others in the community. Actually, my first experience doing political door knocking was for PCE back in 2016, also door knocking for Menlo Spark when I was still in high school. And so, and now, I just got sworn in my first meeting on the board as an alternate member. And so I think it's very valuable to engage students and young people and keep them engaged throughout the future for public service. So I'd just like to voice my support.
Great, thank you. Tiger Jazz.
Thank you very much. I feel like the theme tonight is strength in numbers. And like Ray was saying, I feel like Pacifica oftentimes doesn't feel like we have the bandwidth. So this is very exciting to me, and I'm looking forward to taking that excitement and bringing it back to my city council and in the best way possible, bring forth the idea and seeing if we might participate, because I think it's a great opportunity for us to participate, and I support it accordingly. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Donna, go ahead.
Thank you. I think this is really important, and one of the reasons is because I'm sitting with the Flood and Sea Level Rise Resiliency District, the CCAG Resource Management and Climate Protection Committee, Home for All. We're working on housing and climate. Many of our individual cities have CECs, Citizens Environmental Councils. We have Sustainable SMC, a lot of different nonprofits. And oftentimes when I'm sitting in these meetings, everybody's talking about different things, but there's no sort of unifying umbrella organization that can help share the commonalities in between them and sort of build up those relationships so that we're not, so that we're working efficiently and not two of us or three of us working on the same thing in parallel when we could be collaborating and becoming much more efficient. So I think this is really important. I do love that they're gonna bring in the youth advisory committees and the schools. I think that's terrific. And so I'm gonna support this. And then I just have a word for Director Schneider, which is, hey, the City of Trees is right next to you. Come visit. We're happy to help.
Okay.
Donna, I hear
Donna.
you, but we have eucalyptus trees too, and I get our euc lovers too. So yes, I know we have beautiful cities of trees, and that's my dream.
Okay, thank you both. Sam, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I want to express my appreciation for the idea and the effort that has gone into it so far. You know, we actually are in the process of raising our levy system in Foster City, and I couldn't stress enough how much it would have been more helpful had this been a collaborative effort, had this been somebody, you know, getting the help from the county. And I'm appreciative to Supervisor Spine help in our levy system and how we got that through the process of the regulatory agency. But so much could have been done a lot faster and more efficient had this been done with other jurisdictions. So I'm definitely supportive of that.
Great. Yeah, that was our sentiments exactly. Anne, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that Daniel Yost had emailed a public comment, and it's a short one. I can read it into the record.
Do you mind reading it? Yeah.
Nope, that's fine. Okay. So Daniel Yost said, as one of the founding board members of PCE, I had hoped to be there this evening to speak in favor of agenda item 6. I have been part of the SMC Climate Alliance early discussions, and I urge PCE to formally engage in the process with support through dedicated funding or other resources. PCE can use the Climate Alliance as a great tool to help cities and towns in San Mateo County address climate change. From the earliest days of PCE, it was and has been my hope that this support for helping cities and towns address climate change is a role that PCE might play. The Climate Alliance allows PCE to support this while staying focused on its core mission.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Laura Palmer-Lohan, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, so this is kind of reminiscent of what Donald brought up with respect to Homes for All, which is really around engaging various stakeholders to drive the conversation forward. And, I'm fortunate when I championed making climate change action a key priority for San Carlos 2 years ago. It was preempted by, unfortunately, COVID, but we were back at it, and we unanimously proposed the REACH codes on Monday. And one of the things I observed based on the community feedback is just a real lack of knowledge, and I was there too over the summer, about what the technologies are that are available and making the connection, you know, between having 4 weeks of unbreathable air, the wildfires, and our need, for example, to move to all electric, right? And I hosted a community conversation, and some of the members of this board were kind enough to be on the panel. So I think, you know, to the extent to which we can really kind of borrow some of the best practices from the existing you know, groups, right, like Homes for All, et cetera, that have kind of designed, you know, message platforms and hosted ongoing conversations with these stakeholders, that would be great. There was a little bit more resistance from the business community than I expected, and I work in the industry that's coming to San Carlos. So my hope is by driving these conversations, we'll be able to go further, faster together. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, I don't see any other. Oh, Carlos, go ahead.
Oh, okay, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm struggling, but I'm trying to understand how the entity helps. I mean, when we refer, or when the document itself refers to equity and climate justice, when I think of climate justice, I mean, I'm thinking about kind of the social and ethical and political implications of climate change. And that obviously, I think, falls back on the issue of we just consume too much as Western capitalist countries. We clearly are a huge problem, and we're affecting really a majority of the world in doing this. Now, I understand that we're trying to do this on a local basis, but even locally speaking, right? I mean, how do you embed equity, which again, to me, is not a fair share for everybody, but it's an issue of those that have been deprived in the past should be able to receive more benefits to create equity. And you know, how do these ideas actually flow into this effort? I don't quite understand yet, and maybe it's just I'm not bright enough to understand it, but I think it pays some lip service to it. I just don't know how it gets implemented. I mean, I guess in general I'm supportive of it, but I don't know how it gets deeply embedded and ultimately how it actually gets actualized.
Oh, you're a bright guy, Carlos. That's a good question. I think your point is well taken. I won't speak for the whole group, but and I think in terms of, I think a lot of the sort of details, the initiatives that we're thinking about with this are yet to be worked out. But I agree that I think that concrete gains in equity should be an important consideration as this goes forward. And so, I mean, I think the initial thought was that we were this was basically a chance for some, just for some communities to kind of step out in front with things they were, able to do. Maybe they were just in a better political situation, or they had the resources to sort of push the envelope in terms of things, with the understanding that just anything we do that's improving climate tends to increase equity, just because a lot of the realities of our current system, just a lot of the burdens fall disproportionately on our disadvantaged communities. I don't have a more concrete answer for you, but it's a fair to say that there's maybe someone wants to add to that. It's fair to say that I think a lot of the exact details of how this is going to benefit communities are sort of still up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right, Jeff. It's but we want to make we talked earlier about principles, and this is, equity is a principle that we want to, infuse into all the work of this collaborative. But right, but there's a lot of thoughts about how you really do that. A lot of thought to be given.
Well, and Dave, would you mind if I speak a little bit on that?
Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, so I mean, when you're taking equity into account in these climate principles, for instance, when we're looking at EV chargers, there are assumptions made that multifamily housing dwellers don't need EV chargers because they don't want. We've actually heard arguments that they're not going to drive electric vehicles. So knocking down baseless assumptions like that, while at the same time when you're implementing a burnout ordinance, taking into account the fact that not everybody in your community is going to be able to afford the burnout ordinance. So setting aside monies to go ahead and actually be able to make sure that you're not putting in place an ordinance which is going to disproportionately affect underserved populations in your community, but rather that you've put resources aside in order to go ahead and make sure that everybody is enjoying those benefits in the community. And so making sure you have that lens both in the creation of the ordinances, and then also making sure that there aren't just baseless assumptions about bringing everybody into this into enjoying a carbon-free future. So those are just two examples right off the top of my head that I can think of, but there are more that we've started to try to identify and knock down in our CAP through our EQC.
Thanks, Ray. Ann Schneider, go ahead.
Sorry, of course, this is the topic I love to talk about. Carlos, 2 examples for all of our communities that are going to be identified as heat islands. One of the solutions, of course, is trees. To me, trees can solve multiple problems at one time. But the biggest problem with trees is ongoing maintenance. And that comes down to how much money each city has to maintain staff to do that. So I think one of the things the county could look at is for those cities that are more economically disadvantaged, that maybe there is a partnership between the wealthy cities and the less wealthy cities on tree maintenance, because it serves us all. In Oakland, I have a friend who's been planting trees in West Oakland in high crime areas. And the act of planting trees brings the community together, gets neighbors talking to each other, and they are pushing the drug dealers out of the area. So there are multiple benefits for doing this, but the unequal areas, typically lower income, are going to have fewer trees. They're going to be heat islands. They're going to have more people affected by heat waves, and that becomes a countywide health issue.
Good point. Thanks, Sam.
And the flip side of that, I'm sorry, I'm on a statewide commission. I'm actually tasked to looking at our consumer culture. And you will see come June 30th, our recommendations from the statewide market development committee on things about consumption and resource use. And I would love to have people, cities, who will ask our assembly and senators to take on these as legislation for the next year.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Giselle, go ahead.
Yeah, Carlos, this is a really important point, and I'm really glad you brought it up. I will say, you know, for me, when I was invited to join these discussions, I felt like the first of a different tier of city at the table, right? I was joining a table that included Menlo Park and Atherton and Woodside and Portola Valley, and which of these kids is not like the other Redwood City? And what I will say is that, you know, maybe one thing we could do in designing this, there's this sort of threshold for participation, right? It was like taking on one major initiative, and then there was some other commitment. You know, I know, for example, with Redwood City, and I think for a number of our cities, there's just so many dire situations we're dealing with so many, with our residents on just basic needs, that it is hard to carve out the staff time and even the public support for major commitment like that. So one idea could be, even for those cities who are not ready to commit to something at this level, is finding a way to have them at the table, because they're going to be sharing the specific ways in which their residents are experiencing, you know, climate change. And I do believe there is a collective good accelerating this work, right? We are all going to breathe the same air. You know, sea level rise is going to disproportionately impact our county and many of our cities relative to the rest of the state. So there is like a shared goal there. It's just that I personally believe there are a mix of cities in the county that are going to be able to move as fast. We took a long time on our REACH codes, and it was highly controversial. And in other cities, it just cruised by. And I really think it depends, you know, where the public mindset is. If you're struggling for basic food and housing security, it's lower on the list oftentimes, right? But if you're not, if your majority of the community is not in that place, I've observed it's higher on the list. So that was my thought as we went through this process.
Yes, well said, Giselle. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. I think I think we, Dave, I think we got some good feedback on this. It sounds
Yes,
like people
appreciate
are
it.
definitely really appreciate the effort and are very interested in moving this forward. And like Dave said, we will, I think the group will continue to work on this, and you'll be getting updates from them and us to go forward. So if there are no other comments at the moment, I think we'll move on. Okay, thank you. Item 7, yeah, 7. This is the CAC's statement on equity. Who's presenting this?
I am, Mr. Chair, Ray Larios.
Go ahead, Ray. Yep, thanks, Ray.
Good evening, everybody. Mr. Chair, thank you for having me here today. Thank you to the Board of Directors. I'm here today to ask you to accept the recommendation on the draft statement that the Equity and Inclusion Work Group from the Citizens Advisory Committee prepared. You can find this document in your meeting package on page 52 and 53. If you'd like to scroll to that, it will give you the background and preamble and some of the recommendations that we've made. So just a quick background, the Citizens Advisory Committee formed a work group based on the work plan for the Citizens Advisory Committee, and we formed it in the summer. And the members that were part of this working group were myself, Diane Bailey, Katie Green, Terry Givens, Jason Mendelson. And we had other people come in also. I know Jan was in a few meetings as well. So it was a really great group of people, especially Terry Givens, who's a scholar, who's a woman of color and a scholar in racial justice and equity. So we had a lot of expertise in the room. So what happened was on January 14th, we actually brought the final draft recommendation to the rest of the CAC for approval so that we could bring it over to you today. And so before doing that, we actually did bring it to the CAC on 2 separate occasions, and that was to get the feedback from everybody else, so it wouldn't just be the working group. And so there is a preamble that Terry Givens actually helped write, and it'll give you the frame of mind and the lens of what we were thinking when we came up with this draft. And it was really in response to what happened in the summer of last year in connection with the murder of George Floyd. And so I'm gonna respect her expertise and read this statement to you. In light of the community's focus on anti-racism and Black Lives Matter movement following the death of George Floyd in May 2020, and other continuing instances of systematic racism and institutional violence against Black people, the Peninsula Clean Energy CAC Equity Working Group has worked over the past few months on a statement that would embody the commitment of the organization to ensure equity and inclusion in their work. The working group recognizes that there are many forms of discrimination that impact people from different backgrounds, but the growing awareness of significant violence and discrimination against people of color is our current focus. And we are committed to developing a framework that will eventually address discrimination in all its forms. And so we recommend the adoption of the following statement. I'd like to pause and, I've been with you tonight, and I have to say, first and foremost, thank you for all the work that this board does. But I have been hearing a theme repeat itself throughout the night: equity, what does it mean? How can we accomplish it? And so I think this is a good start. It's a draft, and what that means is it's a living document, and the board can use this as a base to move the discussion forward and really think about ways that they can really create impactful and meaningful ways of implementing equity. So we developed 3 points. It's on page 53. The first one is Peninsula Clean Energy commits to making anti-racism top of mind during decision making. And we created 2 bullet points. We'll follow best practices in hiring, vendor selection, and project selection. We'll use a racial equity lens when developing the community impact report. And again, this is a draft statement. So I don't think right now in the effort of saving time, I don't think it would be practical or effective for us to wordsmith this, but just consider again that it is a living document. And so it's the basis for which maybe you can also include your own ideas or talk about what works best. The second point is develop a means of tracking revenue and formulating a mechanism, qualitative and quantitative, that ensures accountability. So the current board goals, I believe, are at 20% of its programs funding going to low-income communities. So we believe that it shouldn't be the ceiling. It should be a good start. But again, we definitely deferred to the board. And finally, third point is pursue equity in energy generation and programs. I know I heard Mr. Romero and a couple other people ask what that means. Like, what does equity mean? You know, along the supply chain, does it mean that where it's produced, where it's, you know, where it's consumed, you know, who gets what? And so it's a very broad problem. And I think that, you know, if we just focus on pursuing equity in energy generation and programs, I think we can make some meaningful changes. So under this point, there's a bullet point: low-income households as well as Black, Hispanic, and Native American households pay a much larger share of their income on energy bills, straining budgets and putting them at a heightened risk of utility shutoffs during COVID-19 pandemic and the recession. And so again, this is something that we thought was important as the Citizen Advisory Committee and as the Equity Working Group. But nevertheless, I think there's definitely room for expanding this. So, with this said, I again would like to thank you for your time today. And I definitely take some questions if appropriate. And of course, if we have the time to take them. Otherwise, I do recommend again that this body accepts this draft statement on equity and inclusion from the Citizens Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. And I just want to thank, Ray and his fellow members of the subcommittee and the full CAC put a lot of work into this. And I really appreciate you guys doing this. And I think you come up with a great document here. That said, I will take questions, and we are being asked to accept the statement, but we should discuss that. So Donna, go ahead.
Thank you. So I attended the CAC meeting where they presented this, and I do know how hard and long that organization, the CAC, worked on this, and I really do appreciate the effort that everyone put into it. My issue tonight is really that more around how absolutely critical and important this is, that I actually think this should have been brought to the board, and the board and the staff should have, could take some of the ideas that they've started with. And I'm, when it first came up, I was just a little surprised that this had been kicked down to the CAC, not that they're not qualified to do it, but this is important enough that there's not a single organization on which I sit that hasn't taken the initiative at the board level to work on this and the staff level. So, I think it's a good start. I think generally you draft these as a board policy and then you put together a comprehensive action plan. I just haven't had enough time to kind of think about it and discuss it. And to me, it's such an important policy that I would like to use this as a basis from which to possibly create a subcommittee of people to work on this from the board, maybe in conjunction with the staff and even the CAC. So while I really appreciate it, and I like it, I just think that it's important enough that we need to probably spend a little more time on it.
Okay, thanks, Donna. Rod, go ahead.
I just want to appreciate the CAC for drafting this and really centering the voices of equity. I think a lot of times when we think of equity, we think of equality, and equality and equity are two different things, right? I'm going to use like an example from one of my colleagues, Christopher Emden from New York, and he was saying that usually this is what equality is. Equality is if you had a classroom of students that are like 75%, allergic to apples, but then you come in one day and say, you know what? Here's equality. I'm going to give everybody food and I'm going to give everybody apples. 75% of those folks are going to get sick, right? So when we think about equity, we got to think about how specific and how the histories of people, the history of Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, and how we can engage these communities, because ultimately they get affected first and they get affected deeply. So I applaud that you are centering the values around equity and putting at the center of Black lives. And thank you for that.
Thanks, Rod. Other comments? Carlos, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm fine with this statement, but I'm actually going to challenge the board that if we want to bring it in, I think we should actually bring it in. But I think that if we have a subpanel, we actually include people from the racial equity groups that are out there, like Black Lives Matter. Let's really mix up a discussion with people who clearly, I think, are more centered in this dialogue, and that would certainly teach us a lot. So I'm sure it would be actually a tough conversation for us. But I think if we really want to talk about it and bring it into the board, I think if we did a subcommittee, we should have probably, some outside members involved indeed in the racial and social justice equity movements that we are seeing today in the country, in the Bay Area.
Okay, that's an interesting suggestion. Are you suggesting sort of, you're agreeing with Donna, you'd like to sort of just have a look at this at the board and this maybe this broader community level?
So, I mean, I could live with what is presented. I'm a little curious about the 20% number. I mean, if I look at the county stats, I would say that number should be higher. But I mean, I could live with that statement, but I think bringing it into the board would be fine. But I think that it should not just be the board. I think it would be helpful to have, if we had a subcommittee, other folks, in that body.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Rick DeGolia is up. Go ahead, Rick. You're on mute, Rick. Are you?
I'm muted, sorry. I think what Carlos just suggested is exactly right. I think it should be an ad hoc committee, and I think that members of the CAC, there should be a couple members of the CAC that are participating in that. I think the CAC did a huge job here. This is now before the board, and it's before the board because of the CAC. And it's a really good thing that it's before us, and we should go forward. I think Donna's suggestion is a very good one, and it should include members of the CAC to participate in that work.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too. Bonilla, go ahead.
I also appreciated what Carlos said. It sounds like a reality check. Broaden the discussion to some people who are actually living, I think, the issues that we're talking about, to see if there isn't something we're missing, and then also bring it forward, for some final touch-up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ann Schneider, go ahead.
I have a question. I have two neighborhoods greatly affected by the proximity to 101 and the airport. And both of them make too much money and are not majority of any one particular race. We are a majority minority, 47% Asian, which doesn't tend to fit in. But trying to protect them and have tools are very difficult. So when I look at equity along racial lines, I think also of equity along, sometimes I think it's geography. I would only encourage you to think slightly broader, because I am trying to figure out how to protect these neighborhoods when I can't use environmental justice as one of the tools. And I would love to offline talk to more people, give me some ideas to help these people that are so affected by noise and air pollution.
Okay, thanks, Ann. That's a good point.
Thank you.
Laura, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll keep this brief. So I'm in full alignment that I think it's important that we have a policy and some around this. And I also agree with some of the commentary around how to make sure we can fully integrate it in the way that we think and work and act. And so I think some of the comments made by Donna and Carlos were really profound. You know, we've been working on this issue at my company, and it's a rather large globally a global company, and you know, it is definitely taking some time to understand and figure out, you know, what we need to do to change. And so I think I wouldn't want to give this short shrift by just accepting the statement and then not having the board and staff fully embrace and understand what it is what our intention is. And so I want us to do it in a way that we act accordingly, if that makes sense. So I concur with a lot of the comments made this evening, and I'm really pleased that the community advisory committee brought this forward, and I'm glad that they've been working on it and are helping us to be better collectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Pradeep, go ahead. Pradeep, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. I was just giving a couple of examples where we could look at issues of the following sort. Number one example, when we look at clean energy like solar panels, and we have incentives for people to adopt rooftop solar panels, usually they come out as tax credits, which are usually based on income in terms of benefits. So the folks who have lower income will not be able to enjoy the benefit of those subsidies. Number two, many of the people who are suffering for one reason or the other in terms of economics and their race are living in very old apartments, buildings, which may be the least efficient buildings in terms of the energy, but also may not be the one which attract a lot of these new programs of improving efficiencies, etc. So we need to take into account those kind of inequities built into the system when we develop our new programs and new investments. Those are some of my comments that we could look at these in a very solid way. Thank you.
Those are great points, Pradeep. Thanks. Donna, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate Carlos's comment, and mine was not to the exclusion. In the words of our very own Michael Smith, these are very difficult and messy conversations that are hard, often very hard to have. But I think in order to have them authentically, we do have to bring in, you know, even professionals, or we were fortunate enough with the CAC to have people with a lot of experience. So I think bringing those particular people in, some of our own board members and representations from those communities, as well as our board. But I just think that signing off on something like this today, it's too easy. It's too easy. If we sign off on it, it's like, oh, we did it, check the box, there we go. I think we really have to understand what we're signing off on, and all of us buy into it and really do it in an authentic way. So that's why I'm pushing for a little bit more engagement from the board and the staff. With all due respect to the CAC and the work that they have done, this is an excellent jumping off point. And I'm just unhappy as a board that we didn't take it on first and had to wait for them. It's kind of embarrassing, frankly.
Mr. Chair, this is Ray Larios.
Yes, Ray, go ahead.
May I make a comment?
Please.
Thank you, everybody, for so far. I know that there might be people who have more comments to make. I just heard a lot of feedback, and I really like what I hear. I will say, you know, a couple of things just in response to some of the things that I've heard. Just remember again that this is a living document. Nothing prevents you from accepting this today and still continuing to work on it. And I don't think it diminishes any of the less if it comes from the CAC. After all, the CAC represents, you know, the citizens of our county. And so I think it is the right fit, and I think it is a good starting point. And I do highly advise that that this body does consider taking the recommendation and accepting it as a draft statement, so that, you know, the board can take it away from there.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. I'm looking at the resolution on the screen here, and I believe this is actually, I think this is consistent with what Ray is saying about the draft we have in front of us and what Donna and Carlos are asking for, which is that we continue the conversation beyond, I mean, that we're accepting a draft. It is not a final draft. It is part of a process. So I guess what I think from the conversation I've heard so far, I feel like there's a consensus around doing this, accepting this, and then basically creating maybe a subcommittee. Sounds like there's some people that might be interested in that subcommittee, and moving forward with a subcommittee of maybe CAC members, board members, and community members. I can't think off the top of my head of exactly how to organize that, but I think we could probably, I'm sure that a handful of us could move forward with that. Colleen has her hand up. Go ahead, Colleen.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to note that there's also underprivileged communities that may be negatively impacted by some energy creation that will happen through the JPA. So this is a good starting point, because oftentimes they're impacted environmentally and they often feel like they don't have a voice. It's easy to locate some energy generation in areas where there's communities don't have a means to oppose it, and they feel like they're being told what to do.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Thank you. Donna, go ahead. You're muted.
I will go ahead and see if I can craft are we looking for a motion, Jeff?
Well, I think there's two things. I think we could come up with a motion to accept the work as a draft, and then I think we could like to walk away with her having formed maybe a subcommittee to start a process of sort of continuing forward with this.
So
do you want to take a stab at
yeah,
that?
maybe what I'm thinking is maybe we flip it, and the motion is to form a community committee, a subcommittee of the board plus community members to develop a, whatever it is, DEAI, or however we want to couch it, board policy and then action plan, using the CAC's draft equity statement as the basis from which we begin that work.
I think that makes sense. Ray, is that okay for you? Okay, I think Ray's, he's nodding his head. So
yes, Mr. Chair. Sorry.
No problem. Is that your motion, or is that?
Yes, that'd be
Okay.
that would be my motion.
Second. I'll second the motion.
I heard someone, and then I heard Carlos. I'm not sure who the first person.
You have it.
All right, Carlos seconds. Is there any public discussion on this item before we move ahead? And again, raise hands. Oh, Jennifer, go ahead. I should have asked you. Go ahead. You're going to tell me I just did something wrong.
No, not at all. I mean, is the desire to create a ad hoc subcommittee for the specific purpose of developing and contributing to this particular goal, or is it a different desire to create a kind of a standing committee, which would be a Brown Act governed body?
For me, Jeff, it would be a standing, I mean, not a standing committee, but an ad hoc committee that would meet for maybe, 3 months or so and put this together and then make a presentation to the board. I don't think and then at that point, the board, I think, has the responsibility to review the implementation and evaluate the efficacy.
Okay, yeah, that makes the most sense, I think, in the situation.
Yeah, that was my sense too. I agree. Thanks for clarifying that, Jennifer. I knew it was actually, just while I'm thinking about it. So we have, I think we are not accepting the resolution that is in the packet. Is that correct? I think we're making a slightly different motion here. I just want to make sure I'm
right. So the motion would be to create the ad hoc committee with members of the board, the staff, citizens, and CAC as directed under, say, the chair of the board. Jeff, I'm supposed you'd be the one to help put this all together.
Yeah.
Using the draft equity statement prepared by the Citizens Advisory Committee as the initial guiding document and basis from which to develop, the policy.
Yes.
The policy,
Okay.
and the action plan.
Okay, so I actually rereading the resolution itself. It is actually consistent with what you're proposing. I think we're good there. I just want to make sure we weren't voting on something that was too different from what was on the resolution, but it's actually not that different. So, is there any other discussion on this item? Well, so we'll take a vote on Donna's motion, and then I think maybe we should just maybe line up a few people, see who wants to start out working on a subcommittee after that. So if there's no other discussion, then Anne, can you take a roll call vote here?
Okay, and may I just verify that I had a description of what Donna's motion was, but it sounds like from what you said, Jeff, that we are merely approving the resolution presented by the CAC.
We're approving the motion. We're approving the resolution from the CAC with the, and then we will name it's not actually, I don't think it's an official action, and council, correct me if I'm wrong, but then we will put together a subcommittee to sort of carry out the intention of the resolution. Yes. So we're voting right now on the resolution to accept the draft as part of a sort of an ongoing process.
Okay. Okay, then if you would please announce your approval or disapproval of the motion when I announce your jurisdiction. County of San Mateo.
Yes.
County of San Mateo.
Yes.
Town of Atherton.
Yes.
City of Belmont.
Yes.
City of Brisbane.
Yes.
City of Burlingame.
Yes.
Town of Colma. City of Daly City.
Yes.
City of East Palo Alto.
Yes.
City of Foster City.
Yes.
City of Half Moon Bay. Half Moon Bay. Town of Hillsborough.
Yes.
City of Los Banos.
Yes.
City of Menlo Park.
Yes.
City of Millbrae.
Yes.
City of Pacifica.
Yes.
Town of Portola Valley.
Yes.
City of Redwood City.
Yes.
City of San Bruno.
That's a yes.
Oh, thank you. City of San Carlos.
Yes.
City of San Mateo.
Yes.
City of South San Francisco.
Yes.
Town of Woodside. The motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. And thank you again to Ray and the CAC for moving this forward. In that case, so then we will move on to, I guess we'll collect, who would like to be part of this subcommittee that will go forward on this? Donna, are you, I see Donna's hand up. Are you?
Yes.
Okay, Donna's in. It looks like Rod, is your hand up to volunteer?
Yes.
Okay. James, are you in?
Yes.
Great. Okay. If anyone who wants to volunteer later could feel free to contact Donna or me, whoever's Laura's got her hand up.
Possibly there would be some alternates that might be interested as well.
Yes, that's a good point. So Donna, would you be, and Betsy's got her hand up. Donna, would you be okay sort of taking the lead on this and coordinating with this group and then with the CAC?
Yes, Ray and I will work
as a first step?
together. Ray and I
That'd be
live
great.
a block away from each other. We can.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I can do
we're
the
neighbors.
as an alternate too, depending on when the meetings are held.
Great.
Got it.
Thanks, Rick. You know what? I'll be happy to work with you guys in some form too. It'd definitely be an honor. Sam, are you also volunteering?
Hindi. I'm just writing everybody's name.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank
All
you.
right. Okay, and again, anyone else, please don't be shy. You can reach out later. And I think that's a good start. So thank you all again. And with that, I think we can move on. Okay, and that brings us to item 8, board reports. Does anybody have anything they want to share with us before we adjourn? James, go ahead. Oh, Sorry,
Sorry,
are you-
my
I
hand
think
was still
your hands are
raised, so
still
my-
up for volunteering.
fine.
Sorry, yeah. Anne, looks like Anne's hand just popped up. Anne, go ahead.
The City of Millbrae just wants to say thank you to PCE staff. Our REACH codes were officially adopted by the Cal PUC today, so thank you.
Awesome, good work. All right. Okay. On that note, if there are no other board reports, I believe we are adjourned. And Rick, thank you for piloting in my absence there. Sorry about that. I will talk to you all soon.
Good night, everybody.
All right,
Thank
take
you.
care, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, thank you.
Good night, thank you.
Night, everyone.
Night.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.